March 24th, 2022, 6 p.m. Welcome, everyone, to our annual budget hearing. It's a two-day extravaganza where we talk with department heads and the town manager's office about the proposed budget this year for the fiscal year 23 budget that town meeting will be considering and hopefully approving in May. Before we get to that, we have our routine agenda, which specifically means the consideration of the minutes from our last meeting, which was February 17th. I hope everyone has had a chance to read them, scrutinize them, spell check them. Does anyone have any questions or motions pertaining to those minutes?
I move to accept the minutes.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to approve the minutes of February 17th. Are there further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed say nay. Motion carries. The minutes of February 17th are approved.
Just because I wasn't here.
Our new member, Donna O'Connor, who, by the way, I should have welcomed earlier. Our new member, substitute member, interim member, whatever. Donna O'Connor, welcome. Hannah Kane had to resign due to pressing issues, and frankly, she's a very busy person. Donna has been appointed, at least for some period of time, to fill Hannah's seat, and is abstaining from the minutes,
Yes.
because frankly, she wasn't at the last meeting, so that's great. Thank you. Mr. Mizikar, do you have a report for us?
I would just note to the good evening, first of all. I'll just note to the Finance Committee that we have uploaded updated local receipts through February to your drive. Pleased to report that through the first 8 months of the fiscal year, we're about 10% ahead of where we were last year, which is about $556,000. So that does not include what we anticipate coming in March, which is the bulk of the motor vehicle excise tax, Commitment 1. Last year, we collected about $3 million in that receipt category alone, so those are still being processed through the end of the month. So we'll have an update for you at your April meeting. But that's all I have for the manager's report.
Are there any questions on that? I bought a new car this past year.
Thank you.
So the increase is probably all me.
That's one nice car.
It really isn't, but yeah. Okay, then let's move on from that brief report to our department budget hearings. We'll start at the top. Mr. Mizikar, is there any chance we'll be going off this schedule, or are we going to roughly stick with it?
Not this evening. We'll definitely be staying in departmental order. You know, the pace will likely change over what's posted, which is anticipated and done every year, but we have no change to the order this evening.
Okay, thank you. I also want to acknowledge sitting at the town manager's desk, our new assistant town manager for administration and finance, Mary Thompson. Welcome tonight. You've been here for several years in other roles, but now you're here for the full ride. I hope you enjoy our two-day extravaganza. All right, let's start with, we're going to go with the budget overview, or do we go straight to information tech?
We'll do a budget overview, and then you can open the public hearing, or unless you want to do that before the overview.
No, I'd like to do that first.
Okay. Thank you.
Do I need a motion for that, or can we just open the public hearing?
We'll take a motion.
Can't hurt.
Move we open the public hearing.
Second.
Well, I think you got it first, sorry.
It's fine.
You can fight for it if you want. There's a motion and a second to open the public hearing. Is there any further discussion? All in favor of opening the public hearing, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Public hearing is open. Thank you very much. All right, Mr. Mizikar.
Thank you. Good evening again. So just for all those watching, as Chair Adler said, this is the first of two sessions with regards to the public hearing process on the budget. It is a public hearing. So Mr. Adler will be ensuring any comment or questions that are to be had will be reviewed. This evening we'll run from approximately 6 to 9, and we'll start at 8:30 on Saturday morning and work our way through the posted hearing schedule, which for this evening includes Administration and Finance, Public Safety, Community Development, and Human Services aspects Administration and Finance will be included for part of Saturday as well. Everything is available that we're reviewing this evening on the town's website through our Financial Management Resources and Transparency Center. So you can find the fiscal year 23 budget document and various ways to dig in and dive in at our dedicated web page through ClearGov, which is found off of the budget page. So that gives you the opportunity to understand how your individual tax bill impacts the overall operations of the budget. Of course, throughout the entire course of this evening and most of the day on Saturday, you'll be guided by your local government leaders on how they will request to allocate resources to serve you and your fellow residents. That will include all departments that are included across all spectrums. The only exclusion is Selco, as they're managed through a different general law and not subject to town meeting appropriation, which the Finance Committee is advisory to. Before I get into the details of the budget, I just have a couple opening comments. Budget hearings on the surface may seem to be all about dollars and cents. However, this process has an even greater meaning. This process is about how we recommend allocating the resources of the residents of the town of Shrewsbury in order to provide them with a place to thrive. The budget is the single most consequential policy document of the town. The dollars and cents may compensate our greatest assets, our employees, fund resources for projects that will transform how we do business, and like they do every year, will literally save people's lives and educate America's future leaders. Town leadership, I, the Board of Selectmen, recommend this financial plan. We encourage you to get into the dollars and cents throughout this hearing process and remind you that the plan must serve everyone in this great town so they can be safe, healthy, and grow together. So the fiscal year budget process will rely upon $164.8 million worth of revenue. The largest portion of that revenue comes from the general property taxation, which is $1,102,616,745. The other significant categories include state aid, local receipts, and revenues that we receive from the operation of our various utilities. We plan to expend those resources over a variety of purposes. The largest single purchase is the general operating budget, which totals almost $139 million as proposed. It also includes expenditures across the utilities, which are raised through rates, and we satisfy obligations to the state in charges and offsets that they advise us that we need to. We also fund things through various warrant articles, which will be covered through the Finance Committee hearings towards the end of the month of April. With regards to an overview of the budget, again, $134.4 million will be reviewed by this committee over the course of these next two meetings. The largest single category will be handled through the middle of Saturday morning till around lunchtime, which is the education budget, which will be handled by Dr. Sawyer and the school committee. This evening, we'll review a portion of Administration and Finance and Public Safety and Human Services, as I previously mentioned. This budget actually kicks off in the late fall of every year when we begin to work with department heads in having them think about what their goals will be for the ensuing fiscal year and develop their budget. From there, the formal part of the public aspect of the budget starts in February. We find ourselves in March where we'll have this series of hearings. Based upon this hearing and other additional information that has come to fruition since we originally published the budget in February, we'll revise our final figures and represent them to the Finance Committee as a part of your hearing process that will start on April 14th and may continue to April 28th. And then finally, the budget goes before the legislative body of the community, which is town meeting, where it acts, where it will act, hopefully on May 21st, to recommend and adopt these budget figures that we present to you this evening. Before we get into the budget, I think it's important to talk about the work that departments do to ensure that we're managing resources as best we can and looking outside of the organization, just not inward to the residents of Shrewsbury. Over the course of the last fiscal year, town departments have worked diligently and secured $734,852.72 in grants. This does not include any of the federal stimulus funding. This is all funds outside of that. If we were to have to raise this amount of money through the general tax levy, that means we would have to find an additional $53 million worth of assessed real estate value to tax. So this is a substantial amount of work that does not go unnoticed and provides true value to the community, and just wanted to acknowledge the hard work of all the departments to put into receiving these grant funds. So with that, Mr. Chairman, if I may have our IT director, Mr. Greg Honorato, come and join us and present the information technology budget.
Should I sit next to you?
Yeah, please.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you, welcome.
Good evening, everyone. As Mr. Mizikar said, I'm Greg Honorato. I'm the IT director for Selco, and as you probably know, Selco provides IT services to all town departments, excluding the school department, who has their own IT staff. Excuse me. So I just want to give you a couple of updates on what's been going on. I don't know what this says about me, but since I took this job, I had 2 employees accept jobs in other places. So hiring is a little bit crazy right now. So thankfully, it took a little while, but we've brought on 2 new people. One of them has started already. One of them is starting next week. And we're actually expanding the department. We've spent a lot of time looking at data and requests coming in from various places. And our goal is to end up with 2 system network administrators, 2 technical support representatives, and a business analyst, which is already on staff. So we're getting close. We actually have 3 people that we've made agreements with. A 4th is pending. And this has been a long time coming, in my opinion, but we're planning on implementing a formal on-call rotation. Specifically, it's important that public safety has IT support off hours. Obviously, if a dispatcher can't do his or her job at 2 a.m., that's kind of a problem. But we also have other departments that are open non-standard hours. The library is open later. The Selco help desk is open later. If Selco has an outage, they may need IT support at any time of day or night. So that's part of the plan as well. And we also, I may have mentioned this last year, I don't remember, but we've been using a company called Wally Computer Associates as a managed service provider. So they've actually been dealing with what we call the tier 1 support requests. So if it's, relatively simple things, they handle it for us. And if they can't, or there's something that they just don't know how to do, they escalate it to my team and we take over from there. So that's kind of the update.
Excuse me, just a moment. Alex, can you tell us where that presentation is in our book? Because it's not matching the page number in our book, page 94.
The presentation's in the Google Drive.
Okay, but it's separate, unlike the other. Is it because it was brought at a different time? Because all the others are.
Page numbers should match the printed budget book. So IT falls under operating support.
Mm-hmm. It says page 94, but it's not on 94.
Correct page
It might be- I suspect I'm just doing it wrong, which is fine, but
So you're anticipating for questions? No.
Mr. Honorato, this does not reflect on you or anything. It's a little rusty. It's been a while since we've actually had the joy of being together to
I
do
know,
a budget
I know.
presentation. So this is just part of the fun.
So, Mr. Chairman,
Yeah.
Operating support starts on page 94, and you can find details associated with the capital budget at the bottom of page 96, over to the top of page 97.
But the presentation that we saw in the previous, that's what's going to be online
Yes.
for us to be looking at? That's the separate presentation? Okay, thank you. I should have gotten to that sooner. I apologize.
No, it's okay.
Okay, is there more?
That was pretty much my summary, yes.
Thank you. Does anyone on the committee have any questions or comments for the information technology budget? Donna?
Can you tell me what is going to be added or different this year?
In terms of staffing
No,
or in general?
as far as relating to software or,
Sure. Well, I think we've been trying to update systems as much as possible. And actually, this is something we completed already, but our assessing software, we upgraded and moved to the cloud. I think we have a lot of infrastructure-related items that need to be updated or replaced, network switches, wireless access points that have gone out of support, meaning if we have a problem, we can't call the vendor for help. So, it's obviously a piecemeal approach because it costs money, but it's a lot of infrastructure-related stuff. We have some servers as well that at the end of this calendar year, we're gonna have to start thinking about a replacement plan, things like that. Trying to think if there's anything else specifically. It's mostly things like that, and I apologize. I feel like there's something else I'm forgetting, but it's a lot of upgrades and replacements, I guess, would be the general summary.
Yeah, go ahead.
so is there something that you see in our system that you would like to have, but it's not in the budget, or?
No, I think we've done I hope, a reasonably good job of trying to plan. And, I guess, like I said, the biggest thing is we all have to understand it's a process. You can't just rip and replace everything all at once. But I think, I think the funding, if this is approved, is in pretty good shape.
Are you operating in the cloud, or is there any plan to go there in order to save costs?
Yeah, it's kind of a mix of both right now. Not every vendor supports cloud-based solutions, but the ones that do, we've been trying to move in that direction. The caveat there is there are certain systems from a reliability perspective that we would prefer to keep in-house. But yes, to answer your question is as much as possible, yes.
Right. What about security? Do you see any need for future investments to prevent cyber hackers from getting into our systems?
Yeah, so I will answer the question. I don't want to get into a ton of detail. While I don't believe in security through obscurity, I do believe being too specific can make you a target, which we don't want. But what I can say is we have fully automated patch management finally, which was a huge thing for us. Going forward, we're still working on network segmentation, the zero trust model where people or things should only have access to the bare minimum that they need to have access to. Vulnerability scanning is on the list as well. And at some point, we would like to bring in an outside vendor of some kind to do a overall network audit to tell us what we need to be better at.
All right, Judy.
Yeah, just to follow up. I guess what's the horizon for bringing in the third-party audit?
In terms of like the timeline?
Yeah.
It's tough to say because companies charge a good amount of money for that. My preference would be within the next 1 to 2 years at the latest, and I think we'll probably have to start small, do a part of the network first, and then maybe, whatever it is every few months or, however long, keep just plugging away at it. But, my preference would be within the next 1 to 2 years at the latest.
All right, a follow-up if I may. Are there conferences I know I used to work for a university, and there, be conferences, and then there would be you could do peer type reviews and best practices. Are there things similar to that you're able to take part in?
Actually, it's interesting you bring that up because there's something happening, I believe it's next month, that I was invited to, and it's specifically related to the Water and Sewer Department. Obviously, utilities of any kind are a target in the world nowadays, but the answer to your question is absolutely yes.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead.
Is there a way have you thought about prioritizing that a little bit earlier? Is there something you give up now to start? Because security I actually work technology, finance, and we battle this every day.
Yeah.
So, I don't know if you can tell how many times you've been targeted.
Yeah, the answer to your question is yes. We would like to prioritize it. And I'm assuming you're talking about the network auditing piece.
Network auditing, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I really would prefer not to get into targeted, not targeted, but as far as I can tell you, we're not aware of anything at this point.
Any further questions or comments? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
You did a wonderful job. We'll invite you back next year.
So, just the public hearing part of, did you want to seek public comment?
Thank you, Mr. Mizikar. It's a pleasure to be in this forum where we're actually having members of the public sitting in front of us. And even though we've been back and in person a few times this year, there's been nobody sitting in the back, so it's very exciting to see that. So, is there anyone who hasn't been called on, any members of the public, who would like to make any comments or have any questions? All right, thank you. Next time, just feel free to flap your wings, let me know. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, we'll move into the public safety functions of the town operating budget. This functional area includes police, fire, and emergency management department. Collectively, these departments are charged with public safety and well-being of our community. We have 120 total staff members across these three departmental areas. And the proposed budget across the entire functional area is $11.2 million. We'll start off this evening with Chief Kevin Anderson. He's been the chief of the Shrewsbury Police Department since July of 2020. Chief Anderson, I'll turn it over to you for a description of your department and budget.
Thank you very much. Good evening. For those of you who have not met me, I'm Kevin Anderson, Chief of Police. It's good to finally be here in person. Tonight I'm going to go over the FY 2023 budget proposal for the police department. First, I want to talk about some accomplishments we've had last year. We increased recreational safety on Lake Quinsigamon. We made Lake Patrol a priority this year. We prioritized staffing and trained additional officers in boat operations and safety. To give an idea about the increase in calls on Lake Quinsigamon, from last year, from Memorial Day to Labor Day in 2021, we had 749 incidents, which marks a 78% increase from the year prior. We also created a joint task force, which included Worcester Police, Environmental Police, Department of Conservation and Recreation, and we focused on boating and watercraft violations, boat ramp and parking rules and regulations. And during this time frame, we had 110 denied or removed boats or watercrafts from the lake. And I think that improved safety quite a bit. Also last year, we purchased detail tracking software. This allows a supervisor to schedule, manage overtime, details, and time off requests from any device. So how we used to do it is the officer would put in a request on pen and paper, and it would take up to 45 minutes for a sergeant to fill a overtime shift. Now with this detail tracking software, they can do it in about 2 minutes. Next, we worked with Lexipol. We updated all our policies and procedures. Lexipol is an agency that assists police departments with updating their policies and procedures. And they are policies that are written by attorneys who specialize in the field. The policies are written to easy understand language and meet or exceed accreditation standards. Also, they are familiar with Massachusetts laws, and they get updated automatically when the Massachusetts laws get updated. So a major primary goal for fiscal 2023 is updating our existing record management software. We will need to migrate our data, design and set up software, and also train all personnel in the new records management software. The goal is to have that launched by 6/1 of 2024. For those of you that are not familiar, the record management software is, it's vital for the department's operations. It's an agency-wide system that provides for the storage and retention and archiving of all information and all our records within the police department. Next, I'm going to talk about staffing. 1 second. Currently, we have 1 chief, 3 lieutenants, 9 sergeants, 42 officers. And within those 42 officers, it includes 4 detectives and 2 school resource officers. We also have 1 animal control officer, and we have 1 mental health clinician. And that mental health clinician is in the current stage of being hired, and she should be on board in about the next 3 weeks. So as we see in the staff and the charts here, currently including myself, we have 55 sworn personnel. That's about 1.44 per 1,000. And according to the FBI statistics, the national average staffing level in the Northeast is 2.2 sworn officers per 1,000. That would put us in about 83 sworn. Currently, we have 55. Our department is often compared to Westboro, and if you can see by the chart there, Westboro is just almost half the size and population. We're more comparable to Marlboro or Braintree based on our population and our call volume. To give you an idea, Marlboro has 78 sworn and Braintree has 87. The shortage of personnel presents considerable challenges for the department. Many times we are only able to handle calls for service, but we are unable to commit officers to things such as traffic enforcement, which is our #1 complaint in town, community policing, elder affairs, working with Shrewsbury's youth, and also those with substance use disorder. Next, I'm going to go over the incidents and types of incidents we have in the town of Shrewsbury. As I said earlier, the police department handled 41,938 incidents in 2021. This is an almost 20% increase compared to 2020. We handled this significant increase in call volume with staffing that was at times significantly reduced to COVID-19. And at one point, we had about 1/3 of our police department, they were out sick on some level of COVID protocol. The officers worked often 16 to 18 hours a day. And during COVID, they did a phenomenal job. They really stepped up. And as our residential and commercial and traffic populations continue to grow, we expect this upward trend in call volume and continue to grow in the future. We have to keep in mind, it's important to note, to add a patrol officer, it takes approximately a year and a half. So if I was told tonight that I can hire a patrol officer, you won't see that patrol officer on the street working for about a year and a half. The process is lengthy. It requires coordination with civil service, conducting background investigations, interviews, medical and psychological exams, also 2 separate physicals, and a 5-month academy and a 3-month field training program. The next slide here, I'm going to talk about the capital improvement plan for the department. As I said earlier, we want to replace our CAD system, that's computer-aided dispatch, along with our record management system. Record management covers the entire lifespan of records development, from the initial generation to its completion. An effective record management system allows single entry of data while supporting multiple reporting mechanisms. So example, a call comes into dispatch, goes through computer-aided dispatch. That gets transferred over to the record management system, so that allows dispatch to give that information that the officer can access to do their reports, and then also gives the information the admin assistants the ability to access that information for reports, to send reports to other departments, or to send complaints down to Westboro Court. The next thing we're asking for is tasers to be replaced. They're at the end of their life. They last about 5 years, and this is year 1 of a 3-year payment plan. And then the last is vehicles. We're requesting 3 cruisers, all 3 being hybrid, and that's to replace 3 in the existing fleet that are at the end of their life. And that's all I have. Any questions?
Thank you. Donna?
So just stay with cruises for a minute, Chief.
Sure.
So about how many miles do you get on a cruiser by the end?
So we run our cruises. We try not to run them 24/7 because that just kind of really kills the car. So we try to do them 2 shifts, so 16 hours a day. Usually get about 125,000 miles on a cruiser, which they last about 3 years.
Okay, you want me to just keep going?
just keep-
I have a few questions.
Sure.
So if we go back to policies, you said that the process for updating those policies going forward is that it's automatic?
So,
Did I understand you correctly?
sure. So how the process works is we have an internal working group, including myself, and we've been working with this company for over a year now. It's a lengthy process, and we have a working team where we meet 4 hours twice a week with the lawyers, and we're about 75% complete with those policies, and we're going to be rolling them out in about the next 2 months.
No, so when will you look to see if they need to be updated? Is that automatically done by this company?
It is, and that's the good thing about this company. They monitor the laws that are changing in the state of Massachusetts, and as they change, they notify us that there's been a change in the law, and then they recommend how we change the policy. And when we have a brief meeting, and we make the change in the policy and update according to the update in the laws.
Okay, this one's probably for the town manager too. Do you continue with health insurance for dogs after they retire?
Currently, no, I don't think so.
Is that something that you would consider?
That's a,
I have to look into it.
yeah,
I don't know
we'd have to see
anything
what the
about it.
cost is.
Yep.
Because oftentimes, after they retire, they have injuries that are based on their service, you know, based on whatever they've done while they were working. And then those injuries continue and nag at them, so I just wondered if that would be something that you'd consider. What's the background of the mental health person that you're hiring?
They had, the requirements were at least a master's level, so she has her master's degree.
Okay, and you're getting, is it 3 FTEs?
That's the request.
That's, okay, and what would be the rolling plan? So in other words, next year, will you be asking for 3 more, or what will you do to get yourself up to where you need to be?
So I would each year incrementally ask requests for additional personnel. This year, I'm asking for one of the sergeants, it's going to be a training sergeant. It's going to handle all our training and maintain our records of training and providing training for the officers, and then 2 additional officers to assist with the increase in call volume.
And one more question. I've seen just lately 3 publicized traffic stops where there's been weapons and drugs seized, and that's, have they all been on the night shift?
They have been.
So do you feel that there's enough staffing on the night shift? Because it seems like that's when all the creepiness comes out.
Well, that's where one of the officers is going to be on the night shift, and one's going to be an additional midnight shift officer.
Okay, thank you.
You talked about the lake and having a lot more calls there and doing that. Do we receive any money through fees or anything else at the lake to help pay for the policing of it? I mean, you talked about the water safety.
So we receive dock fees, which are in, they don't directly go to the police department, but those are the revenue that we receive. We also receive fees for, what is it called? Boat put-in, or the, launch fees. Yeah, that helps cover the staff to ensure that we can review the registrations and things like that, so that indirectly benefits the department as well. And then, that's kind of it.
Okay, so then you get something, but it's not necessarily in their budget.
It certainly doesn't cover the cost of the patrols and things like that from the police department.
Has there been thought about, I mean, what about when they give out tickets? What happens with that? Does that go
It's part of the local receipts.
to local receipts?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
'Cause it sounds like it's becoming a bigger issue for the police department.
It is.
Yeah, so, yeah. The second question is on the information technology for that. Is that the price of just the software, or is that the price of software, training, and a consultant to implement for the CAD and RMS software?
That's the 5-year cost.
5-year cost?
Yep.
And that includes training, so.
That
all
includes training, that includes maintenance, yearly maintenance. And we'll actually have the server on site,
Okay.
and they'll maintain that server.
And then they'll maintain it and
They'll
put all
maintain.
backups and that type of stuff. It's
No
all,
backup, yep. And also, there's gonna be a training server as well. So right now, in our record management system, to train an officer to use it, we have to actually use it. And we have to create like a fake arrest or something like that. We're gonna actually have a training server we
sounds
can
like you
use
might
for
not
training.
do a fake arrest with all the ones. going on, but- Yeah, okay, so that's good. So it's more than just the software, it's a lot, everything else you need around the software.
Yes,
Mr. O'Connell is available for your fake arrest. Just,
okay.
As long as it's fake.
He's the John Doe.
yeah. Vikram?
Yes. Chief, the 20% increase in incidents, that's a little bit concerning. Do you have more data in terms of, like, which part of the pie chart that really happened? Did you see any sort of increase more, say, in the blue section calls for service or something else, or?
I don't have that, but I would say it would be patrol initiated and calls for service, probably mixed in there. So combined with the calls, and then also patrol initiated from the officers on the lake conducting stops. Those 110 documented stops and removals would be under patrol initiated.
I see. And do you think it's anything to do with, that could be correlated to the lack of staffing that you're facing, that there's this increase in the?
I think it's a combination. So what we saw in COVID, when COVID first started, boat sales and jet ski sales were off the charts. You couldn't even get them.
Right.
So we started to see it right when COVID hit. A lot of people were buying boats and jet skis, and because everything was closed, so they were going on the lake. But we have seen the lake incidents over the years just slowly get to a point where it became an issue.
Thank you.
Judy?
I was wondering, I'm glad to hear that we're bringing on a social service worker. Do we work with any agency, like Shrewsbury Youth and Family Services, to help with some of the calls? I mean, I don't know what your call mix is, but you hear in the news that there's a lot of calls that maybe could be handled by social services as opposed, or in conjunction with a police officer. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Sure, and that's what this mental health clinician is going to be. It's going to be a co-response with a police officer. We did have conversations with Shrewsbury Youth and Family Services, and honestly, they're at their point where they're having a hard time handling their calls. So to come up with us was difficult for them. So that's why we went with hiring our own mental health clinician on staff.
Okay. But that's one person. I guess my concern is, I don't know how many of the calls could be handled, with someone that maybe doesn't take a year and a half to get trained before they come on staff. I don't know if that's something that you've looked at, is maybe adding more social service people to the roster, as opposed to maybe, I'm not saying that you don't need police officers, but I'm talking about to augment that.
Sure, I think this would be a good way to determine if we do need that.
Okay. And actually, I'm curious about body cameras. Do we have body cameras?
We don't have body cameras as of yet. We're having discussions with the unions on body cameras.
And, okay, because, okay, well, I think that's something that I would like to see move forward. And actually, if I may, okay, actually Donna brought up the pet insurance. I do think that, I guess we continue to look at medical coverage for our human police officers when they retire. I do feel like our canine officers should get the same consideration. I'm not sure what the cost, what that cost would be, Mr. Mizikar.
I have no idea.
I think our canine officers should get that consideration. And then, as we're policing the lake, obviously it's not just Shrewsbury people that are using the lake. Do we get any financial support from Worcester or neighboring, how does that work? Are we taking the entire financial burden for policing the lake?
We are the primary police on the lake. We did, as I said, create a joint task force last year with Worcester Police and Environmental Police, and we work together, but we are the primary. When there's a call, the call goes to Shrewsbury Police.
Are there boat launches in is Shrewsbury the only boat launch?
There's, I believe, at least one in Worcester, but it's not public.
Okay, so it's not public.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Chief, the equipment, the taser bundle, when you say year 1 of 3, so the year 2 and 3 would be another $60,000 each, or so is it 180, the total cost?
Yes.
You're committing to? Okay. And how many cruisers do we have in our fleet?
We have 28 total, 2 motorcycles, a boat.
And so when we said 3 new this year, what would the age be of the others? Do we expect more coming up next year, or? Yes.
3 a year.
Yeah,
3 or 4 a year.
3 or 4 a year.
For a year.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's with the cruisers, the idling is a concern too, and the running runs almost 24/7. Some we have to run 3 shifts, but we try to do them 2 shifts to give them a break.
Thank you.
Carlos?
Chief, I wanted to thank you and the rest of the department for all that you do for the town. Thank you.
Thank you.
I was curious how you plan to incorporate some of the DEI task force's recommendations. I know that those came a few months ago, but I was curious if you could share your thoughts on that, on some of those.
Yeah, I haven't discussed any of them with the DEI task force.
Thank you.
Is that it?
That's it.
Donna?
I just have two more. So what you didn't mention is that you do work closely with the school department, the police department, Council on Aging, and Shrewsbury Youth and Family Services, along with having the mental health person that you're hiring, correct?
Yes.
And if you wanted to just touch on, if it's the right time, to just touch on the building that's going on, it's on schedule?
Yes, the building's on schedule, on budget. It's scheduled to be completed hopefully by January of next year. That's going to incorporate buildings for the community to use, for us to engage with different members of the community. And as far as the one of the pieces about the DEI task force, I did speak with Dr. Sawyer, and we did a presentation in front of the board. And I do support school resource officers staying in the schools.
Go ahead.
One more question. You said earlier that it's probably 18 months or more from when you get the rec to hire a new person to come in. When does it actually hit the budget? So if you hire a new police officer, it takes 3 years to get that rec filled. It's not hitting, or 2 years, because it's not hitting the budget until year 2 or 3 years. There part of it that hits right away.
It hits right away. We pay them right as they're recruits in the academy.
Okay.
You all set?
Yep.
Anyone else on the committee? Okay, I've got a question about how police details work, the financial arrangements for it. When we see a police officer holding traffic, whether it's for, say, state highway work or town work or, say, Selco work, which is kind of an amalgam of the private-public, or if there was some need to do a detail for some private work, does that financing the payment come through the town, through the department, and then go back out to the officer? Or what is the financial structure of that process work?
Sure. So the detail comes in through dispatch, and the private contractor will describe where they're working and ask if they need a detail at that location. Anywhere over 40 miles per hour, it's a state law that they have to have one, so on state roads. And that cost goes back to the contractor. The town does not pay for that if it's a private contractor. And there's also an administration fee that is put onto that hourly rate that the town receives. If it's a town detail, which there's not that many, we don't really have a lot of detail officers on town details, that's the town would incorporate that cost.
And so when we were, say, working on the Beale project last few years, and we'd maybe have a detail, maybe blocking Lake Street or some such thing, so that is nominally a town project, but it's being, built by a private contractor, contracted out by the town. Is that any different, or is that still the same process?
I'm not sure. Kevin, is that through is that part of the contract?
Like for the Beale School project, that would have been bid out through their site work contractor, so their police details would have been covered through the project, through that contractor.
Okay.
It does vary. I mean, like the Edgemere project where we're doing public-private work down there in the sewer main, it varies. Some of that's town detail for, the sewer work, and some of it's private detail of the contractor and or the road work. So, but any opportunity that we have, it's, funded by the private contractor, and it's handled through our payroll system. So we receive the money in, and then it's paid out for their hours, and we reconcile that every year.
Thank you. Does the administrative fee, does that cover like the use of the car? That's the cruiser that's sitting out there idling or
Two
lights on
separate
such?
fees.
Ah.
So the administrative fee goes to the town, the general fund.
Sure.
The cruiser fee is added on. So if they need a cruiser, that's $10 an hour. I don't quote me on the exact rate. I think it's $10 an hour. Mary, you know that?
I'm going to hold you to that now.
And
But there is a specific cruiser fee.
that
as
is,
part of the process.
yes.
Interesting. Okay,
And that goes to the general fund as well.
interesting. Okay. Thank you. Anyone else on the committee?
Just had a quick follow-up.
Take your time. Do it, man.
Thank you. The fleet, you mentioned that you have 28 vehicles.
Yes.
Is the goal to make them all hybrid? What is the status on that, I guess?
Yes, that would be, that's the goal, right? The cars we're getting right now are hybrid.
Okay, so how many are hybrid right now versus?
There's two, so there's two right now. We're in the process of getting three delivered. Two delivered, seven. So it'll be seven total after this.
Thank you. Yep.
All right. Anyone else on the committee? Anyone in the comfy seats in the back? Mr. Samia?
John Samia from the Board of Selectmen. Actually, just a comment to follow up Mr. Garcia's question on DEI task force, that we are in the final stages of engaging a consultant to help us work through the task force recommendations. So that's work that should be starting almost immediately as we work through the task force recommendations. And as they relate to the various departments, we'll work through those. Just one other point, that in the task force recommendation, there was a point about the school resource officer, and there was a meeting that the chief had with the school department and just talked about the relationship that the school resource officer undertakes being with the school department, and the memorandum of understanding that exists between the two departments. So we'll work through that as we're going through it, but that's work that we expect to undertake soon with an expert outside in the field.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Samia. Anyone else in the back want to chime in or ask any questions? All right, thank you very much, Chief.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mizikar, why don't we bring up, I see 3 members of the fire department here. Joe, you're going to have to be here eventually. Might as well.
So we have, this evening, firefighter Joe Milos, Chief Jim Vona, who's been chief since May of 2010, and Deputy Chief Seth Colby, who I feel like keeps moving but sits in the same spot, and I just don't see him. So.
Good evening, everyone. Kevin said, I'm Jim Vona. I've been fire chief since 2010. Kind of hard to believe that I'll be entering my 13th year as chief. So we're getting old, Mark. So.
I'm not.
But we have 43, talk about our staffing, we have 43 full-time personnel. Deputy Colby and myself are administrative for the most part, and we have an administrative assistant that does a lot of the secretarial work. She also assists with fire prevention, any money that comes into the department, and she also oversees and administrates the weekly pay as well. We have 4 captains. They're all stationed at headquarters over 4 shifts. In our other stations, we have 3 firefighters, 2 firefighters and a lieutenant at Station 2. And at Station 3, we have 2 firefighters with no supervision, in the building. So we're looking to hopefully add 4 more personnel down at Station 3, make one of those, promote some folks to be lieutenant down there. So we'll have basically at least 3 stations with engines that go out with 3 personnel and a supervisor. We've been working towards that over the last couple of years. We did get a grant back in 2019. It will end in January of this year. 75% of the salaries of the 4 firefighters were paid in the first 2 years, and the third year is 35%. But that'll end in January of 2023. This past year, we did go for another, it's called a SAFER grant. It's, basically adequate firefighter staffing grant. And we were unsuccessful this past year. We have reapplied for the grant again. The American Relief Act has actually pumped another $200 million into that fund. It was $320 million last year. This year it's going to be $520 million. So as I say, I've got 200 million more reasons to hope that we get the grant this year. If we do get the grant, the current program that they're offering is 100% for the first 3 years of the firefighters' salaries. So I think that's why last year there was a lot of folks actually applied for it. And unfortunately, I've explained this in the past, but unfortunately, the town of Shrewsbury, because of the size of our population, we compete with a lot of smaller cities. So we're in the basically above 25,000 to 100,000 population. So we compete with Lawrence, Lowell, Fall River, a lot of communities that are considered, cash-strapped. So we have to look at how we compare to them in a lot of different ways. So, but we're going to stay hopeful that we can get another grant. Staffing is one of the biggest issues that we're looking at. You should have all gotten my copy of the annual report as well. It breaks it down a little bit more and, just compares us to some of the other communities and compares us to some of the averages across the state. So I don't know if anyone has any questions on staffing. Sure.
What's the typical amount of hours that the staff works, a regular firefighter would work? Is it 40-hour week? Is it?
We have it's a rotating 8-day schedule that averages 42 hours a week. Usually between vacation or people out sick or injuries and so forth, there's usually some overtime involved too. It's just kind of the nature of the job. Unfortunately, we have 3 or 4 folks out right now with injuries, so it leads to a lot of backfilling to have enough people in the station.
And what's the typical shift length? Are they
24 hours. They work 24-hour shift, then they have 24 hours off, and then they work another 24-hour shift, and then there's 5 days off.
Okay. Is there any concern with them working 24 hours if there's a lot of calls? Do you bring people in if that happens?
It depends what kind of a call. Obviously, if there's a fire or any type of a large-scale emergency, we have to recall personnel because we don't have enough. Like when there's a fire, you need 20, 30 people, sometimes 40 people, depending on the size of the fire. So we will recall the whole department for any fires that we have. We also have mutual aid agreements with, Worcester, Northborough, Westboro, Boylston, Grafton. So they call us all the time. We call them all the time because it's all about getting people there as fast as we can to deal with the problem.
And then the other question I have is I see there's a lot of extra duty. I'm assuming that's the overtime. Would additional firefighters reduce that cost? So it sort of offset the cost of the new firefighter?
Potentially, but probably not. Our call volume keeps going up. We're up 11% on calls from last year. We did over 4,400 emergency calls, which is the most we've ever done. Some places like every time an engine goes out, that counts as one call. When we send 3 engines out on a call, that counts as 1 call. Some places they count it as 3 calls. So, but we, if it's 1 incident, we call it 1 call. So, but a lot of the overtime too is training. some of it's contractual training. Then they have medical training that we're required to do, and it's not really something that you can do on duty. We also do all of our, Joe Milos is our mechanic, he's with us today, because honestly, he spends most of my capital budget, but he saves a ton of money by doing probably 90% or more of our repairs in-house. So we're fortunate to have someone that has all the skills and qualifications and certifications to do it. Otherwise, we'd be paying 2, 3, 4 times as much for repairs as we're paying now. But that's a substantial part of the overtime budget too.
Okay, yeah, I was just wondering if, you're asking for more firefighters, that was gonna bring down the cost of overtime, which would make it an even, easier thing to say, let's do it.
Can I just add one thing? So you have to remember in the police and fire realm that a lot of your overtime is monetized days off, right? So if I take a day off, or Kristen or Mary or Alex takes a day off, we don't backfill our shift, right? The second firefighter that's off the day, we start backfilling shifts. So it's not overtime like extra work, so to speak. It's just keeping these staffing levels at what they need to be on a day-by-day basis. So assuming that we would remain at only one firefighter granted off per shift without backfill, in some ways you could see more overtime with additional firefighters. And that's not a reason not to do it. It's not why we don't do it, but I just want to make sure that that expectation, if we do or when we do increase staffing, that we don't feel that we can pull a lot of the money out of there, because it is backfilling of the shifts.
You all set, Dennis?
Yep.
Okay, Donna?
Chief, I have a couple questions.
Sure.
So you want a safety, maintenance, and communications officer.
Yes.
How's that accomplished now?
Through a lot of overtime.
But who does the work? So is that Joe?
Majority of that is done by Joe. Yeah.
That's what I thought.
Joe is actually overseeing the whole radio and communications infrastructure project right now.
And that's converting.
Yeah.
Right. So you have a lot of firefighters right now wearing a lot of hats, because that's the nature of the work that you do. But you also have them, it appears that you've really capitalized on getting the expertise out of each person, whatever their strengths are and interests, and you target that and you.
Yes, I have folks that are very good with, I have a couple guys with finance degrees. We have them work on administrative stuff with us. We also have them work on grants and whatever skill that they bring to the table. We have some guys that are very good with like technical rescue skills or hazardous materials. They take the trainings, they come back and they train the other guys on the department, and then when we have these types of calls, we have people with that level of expertise to deal with the problems.
So a lot of this, it seems that the fire department has a real strengthened spirit amongst the group. It seems like there's a lot of teamwork. It seems like they really take pride, and that's reflected when they deal with the public. It's very obvious.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have all those people doing all that work, I'm just curious, like Joe, maybe it's not fair to Joe because he already does that work. I don't know. I realize he does well with overtime, but he's doing that work. So you just want to categorize that.
Yes, I also have concerns that Joe's kind of burning the candle at both ends, and I don't want to completely burn him out, because he still works his regular shifts as a firefighter, works 2 24-hour shifts, and in between all that, he's repairing trucks, he's managing this radio project right now. I have 2 bays filled with radios and equipment and infrastructure that Joe works directly with the folks from Motorola. We had to put up a tower down at Station 3 It's all been overseen by Joe in the fire department. When the radios go down at the police station or anywhere else in town, Joe's usually the first one to get a call. And, you know, no matter what the hour of the day is, I was telling Kevin today, you know, Joe goes on vacation and, you know, he will still, if he's camping anywhere within a couple hours, he'll drive back and fix something for us because it needs to get done. And not just a lot of level of dedication, but I just feel like it's getting to be too much to work his regular shifts and manage all the repairs of the vehicles and the radios. Joe fixes our telephones. If you have something broken, he can fix it, so. There's a lot of schooling that goes, there's a lot of schooling that goes with keeping all these skills up too, so.
I have other questions, but did you just want us to talk strictly on staffing right now?
No, I've been working with Kevin on it right now. I think we're all aware of, you know, we're hoping to add staffing to get us to a safe level.
So who does the fit testing? Does Linda Goslin do the fit testing, or does a firefighter do the fit testing?
We do it in-house. We have a few guys that are trained to do it. Joe's one, Deputy Colby also does it. Firefighter Sean Green, who's on a technical rescue team, he's also trained to do it as well. So we try to, you know, have as much, you know, more than one person that can just do that stuff.
And so do you have all the equipment you need?
Yes.
You
To
just need
do
a
fit
lot.
testing, yeah.
Is that what you're saying?
For fit testing, we have the equipment,
So,
yes.
no, generally, do you have the equipment you need, or is there other equipment that you wish you could get?
Yeah, for the most part, we're very, we're in good shape for equipment. This year, we're asking for a 3/4-ton pickup truck, which will be a vehicle that Joe primarily uses, but it'll be a dual-use vehicle, not just for maintenance, but it'll be set up with radio equipment in it to help support the new infrastructure. So if something breaks in town, you could, I'll let Joe explain it, but you could do like a part-time patch to fix an area that might not be working, as far as a radio or a repeater or a system going down. I don't know if you want to speak on that a little bit.
No, you pretty much Swiss. Said that's what it's there for.
So, I mean, we have a vehicle like this for the district that's about 20 years old, but there's a delay getting that vehicle here, and it's not specifically set up for the new type of equipment that we're gonna be installing here, which is a totally different radio system than the one we've had for the last 20 years or so. This would be specifically to fix problems in Shrewsbury.
Thank you.
We have more on the capital plan, or is that,
For next year, the last 2 years, we've tried to replace our SCBA compressor. This is where we refill our air bottles. We have one that's about 12 years old at fire headquarters that was put in when the building was built. We have another one down at Station 3 where we do our training. We'd like to replace that. We've been trying to do it through grants the last couple of years, so I won't know until later in the year on the grant. We were denied last year. The current compressor that we have right now is almost, down at Station 3, is almost 40 years old, and it's just, you can't even get parts for it or anything anymore. It's 40 years old.
and we can't use the compressors, like, if it's just a refill, we can't bring it to stations 1 or 2. They need to be filled there, or is the one in Station 3 the one?
What we would like to do, no, we have one at headquarters. We'd like to take the one at headquarters, move it down to Station 3, and then put the other one up at headquarters. And really, you need to have two, because if one breaks, then we have to go out of town to refill our air bottles, so we need redundancy, and like I say, the old system is 40 years old now, so.
the old system down at Station 3 this past year failed its air quality test, so we had to take that one out of service entirely. They come every quarterly, so every 3 months, they actually come and check the air that's coming out of the system to make sure there's no contaminants, there's no oil or anything else coming out of it that's not supposed to be in there. And unfortunately, that unit did fail. But like I said, that unit was bought by, Mrs. O'Connor would know this one, that unit was bought by Chief Laflamme and not Andy Laflamme. So it's been there for 30 years now at this point in time.
I'd say it's fortunate that it's fortunate that they caught that it failed,
Yes.
rather than unfortunate that it failed. Yeah, because that would have been, a devastating accident.
Yes.
Thank you.
Any questions on that?
Any more on the capital side, or any other questions on staffing? Anyone in the comfy seats want to talk to the fire department or ask questions thereof? All right, thank you very much, Chief.
All right, very good.
Thank you.
If I missed anything, we didn't really talk about this stuff in the slides.
Mr. Colby,
Thank you.
Deputy Chief Colby.
Hey, good evening. Hey, thank you for having me here tonight. So emergency management's primary function is to coordinate efforts across departments, municipalities, and as well as the private sector. Emergency management in Shrewsbury is made up of a combination of town staff that receives a stipend for doing extra duties with emergency management, as well as volunteers. This past year, we brought on a couple of volunteers. Mr. Adler was one, and Lori Jones. They both stepped up. We're looking for volunteers to help coordinate an emergency shelter should we need one in the event of a blizzard or other natural disaster where we needed to set up a shelter at the Oak Middle School. So they volunteered, stepped up. Lori this past year has been doing a lot of research on it, rewriting our policies and how we would operate it. She's been reaching out to other emergency management agencies in the area to see how they do it, and we're going to bring that to a drill in June. So that's we've been doing a lot with that this year. As well, Dave Fosher and myself. Dave Fosher is a sergeant on the police department, but he's also the deputy director for emergency management. We've been working to coordinate more with surrounding communities. Dave just met the other day with a couple individuals from Worcester Emergency Management to do the training, as well as their CERT team. One of his roles as deputy director is a CERT coordinator, which is the Community Emergency Response Team. Again, it's a group of volunteers that get training in basic first aid, some search and rescue procedures, and other emergency functions, and they're able to help out to supplement when needed. So Dave's been meeting with them and actually working towards being able to do some training between the city and us. As well as we've been in discussions with Northborough and Westborough to do some kind of regional response and be able to coordinate our efforts that way. So that's kind of what we've been doing. Next year, some of our major goals is to update the Comprehensive Emergency Management Plan, referred to as the SEMP. So that's something that really needs updating on a regular basis. The one that we have now is several years out of date. It's kind of a long process. We've been working on it this past year, and we should finish it up probably first quarter or so of this year, or first half of this year. We'll get that done. As well as we're looking to get renewed our LEPC certification. That's the Local Emergency Planning Committee. So that involves things with emergency plans, chemicals, tier two. Again, it's a lot of paperwork, a lot of documentation. We file it with the state, but we want to keep that certification current because that's what makes us eligible for certain grants. And if we just let that that stuff lapse, then we may not be eligible to receive grants. Every year, we receive $9,500 in a EMPG grant, an Emergency Management Performance Grant. We use that for various things in the community. We were using it for radios and kind of keeping our radio system together and supplementing that. Now this past year where we're doing the upgrade, we've used it for other things. We typically split it between police and fire in order to get items that they need and supplement the budget that way. And I guess I've already mentioned the CERT team. Like I said, that they're working to do that. I don't know if rebuild was the best word to throw in there, but because of COVID, they training had all been suspended. So we still have an active CERT team. We always had an active CERT team. They helped this past summer when the police did their national night out. They helped with traffic and stuff there. But they actually had their first meeting, I'll say, since COVID was actually yesterday. And they're looking to expand their ranks as well, get more volunteers, get some new blood in and expand the team. So that's kind of what we're looking to do this coming year.
Does the committee have any questions for emergency management? Ms. O'Connor?
Seth, how often do you do drills?
So, well, there's different ones. So CERT, once they get back in momentum, they'll probably be meeting about once a month, doing drills with them. The LEPC is required to do a minimum of 2 exercises a year. So that's typically vast majority of department heads, town manager's office, public safety.
But that's tabletop.
That's a tabletop drill or tabletop exercise. We also we'll invite the state to come in, the Mass Emergency Management, we'll invite them to come in, as well as some local partners for the private sector that have, I talked about the tier 2, the chemical reporting, the hazardous substance reporting. We'll bring in some of them, will participate. Some school department is involved a lot of times, maybe the busing company. So it's really, it's all these different, not just different, like I said, town departments, but other agencies and other groups, so that it gives everybody a chance to work together, even if it's just in a discussion as a tabletop exercise, so that when an event does happen, all the players kind of know each other, and you're not meeting people for the first time and trying to come up and
Are the firefighters and police required to take those training courses? And I can't remember what they're called. The 100, 200.
Oh, yes, you're talking about the incident command.
Yes.
Yes, so the police and firefighters take incident command training. I know on the fire side, I know it's actually a requirement that they have at least 2 levels, the ICS 100 and 700, in order to graduate from the fire academy. I don't know if the police are required.
No, police, we're just having our command staff be to level 300, but we're not required to do ICS training. But we do it up to 200.
Yep. Which 200 and 300 that's an advanced level of training. And I know that we've had conversations with several of the command staff, and I know they've been taking it. A lot of those courses are actually done through MEMA, through Massachusetts Emergency Management. They provide the course and the instructor and do that. We also did this past year, we did an ICS for executives and elected officials that we did with the town manager's office as well as the department heads. And because it was in the middle of COVID, we couldn't do a class. We were actually the first one that I requested the state to do it. And we were the first one that they did in Massachusetts on a remote, a virtual platform. And I think it went very well, but to give everybody, again, because all these people are involved, and really the thing now for most incidents is a unified command. So it's not the police chief standing up there by themselves or the fire chief or somebody else. It's a unified command with police, fire, DPW, maybe school department, and all these different things, because most events cross multiple lines. And the best way to do it is have a unified command where you've got all those agencies are represented and you're making one joint decision and sending out the same message.
So do you think now that you're gonna get rolling, will you have like, say, a goal of having absolutely 2 a year? Because you have so many different types of emergencies that could come up, whether it's weather-related or some of the other bad things.
Yeah, weather-related right now is probably our biggest concern, and that's, you know, we've seen that now. We get hurricanes, we get snowstorms and stuff. I mean, I don't want to say it's a guarantee, but it's a pretty sure thing that we're going to get something every year, some kind of a weather-related incident. But like I said, as far as the LEPC and the tabletop exercises and drills, a minimum of 2. A minimum of 2.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members of the committee have questions for Mr. Deputy Fire Chief Colby? Anyone in the peanut gallery? All right, thank you very much.
Great. Thank you for your time.
All right, trying to get back on schedule here. Planning and Economic Development is next. Mr. Cahill's already at the table. Welcome.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, if I could just briefly intro, so we'll move from public safety into community development. Community development departments are overseen through the town manager's office by Assistant Town Manager Kristen Lass. She's the Assistant Town Manager for Community Development and Human Services. Across all community development departments, through this budget proposal, there's 10 total FTE and a total of $714,842. We are looking to make some behind-the-scenes changes with regards to how we fund our planning staff, but we'll get into those details as we move into the department. I don't know if you had anything else to say or just move to...
No, I think Mr. Mizikar covered that. I'm happy to help answer any questions, but I'll allow Mr. Cahill to give the presentation for planning and economic development.
Splendid, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the Finance Committee. My name is Bernie Cahill. I am the Director of Planning and Economic Development Department. The Planning and Economic Development Department oversees new projects, residential and commercial, big and small, through the ZBA processes and shepherds these through the ZBA and Planning Board process. We support business retention and attraction and advise boards and committees on land use and other staff as well. We do not have any fancy ladder trucks. We do not have any motorcycles, but what we do have is 2 amazing staff members, assistant town planners, and half of an admin's time. We're a great team, and in this past year, well, I'll just go into some of the accomplishments, is we created, for the first time in Shrewsbury's history, an independent planning department. So it's not been independent before, with a head of that department, excuse me. We did get a new assistant town planner this year, a second one, and it's currently, we're onboarding her at the moment. We also, some accomplishments were, we achieved state certification of the OSRP plan, which is the Open Space and Recreation Plan. This takes meticulous amount of time going through data collection, and not every town receives this. Finally, we also applied for and received a Rapid Recovery Program, an LRP grant, that was to help the town, a state grant to help the town plan for strategies to help businesses in the town center recover from COVID. So some of our primary goals for this fiscal year is to accomplish additional master plan goals and objectives. We are about halfway through the life cycle right now for the master plan. Master plans have 10-year life cycles, and we're about 5 years through. Continue to cultivate new community, the new Community Preservation Committee and Affordable Housing Trusts that were created last year. And just to shamelessly plug something for the Community Preservation Committee, the public forum for the CPC is next Tuesday, the 29th at 6:30 at the library, so I hope many of you can attend.
Can you repeat that again?
Yes, absolutely.
Shamelessly or not, I want to make sure.
Shamelessly or not. The CPC, the Community Preservation Committee, is holding a public forum at the public library next Tuesday, March 29th, at 6:30. So everyone's welcome to attend, so please do attend. The other thing, which I'm going to shamelessly plug again, Mr. Chairman, is we're continuing to expand on economic development activities, especially with the new assistant town planner. And one of those things we have out right now is a small business grant that we're running through ARPA for businesses with 25 employees or fewer. And that expires, or I should say, the last day to apply for that is April 1st. So if there's a business out there with 25 or fewer employees, please let them know to apply for this grant. I believe I already mentioned, so we've created a new assistant town planner position as a full-time position. We have one already existing assistant town planner that we had, a town planner, and we of course had we share an administrator with Patty Sheehan's department, the building department. To go through the fiscal year, the budgets, to move on to those columns, you can see for fiscal year 2022, it was budgeted at $135,206. That was for half of a year of the new assistant town planner's time to run through the end of this fiscal year, June 30th. And half of the administrative, the administrator I just spoke about was to go to the general fund. And I'll rely on Mr. Mizikar, Ms. Lass, if I've gotten anything incorrect. For fiscal year 23, under the FP1 column, you can see we have 2 assistant town planners full-time budgeted for that. We also have the department head salary, and we also have Walter Castagna, who's one of our engineering technicians and field inspectors, has been moved under this budget as well.
I'll just make one quick correction.
Yeah, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Mr. Castagna was paid out of the general fund. He's actually going to be paid out of planning board and inspection fees. Traditionally, the assistant town planner was paid out of the inspection fees, and we're moving that into the general fund. It just makes more sense from both an operational and a logistical standpoint. And I apologize, I should have announced Mr. Cahill as the new Director of Planning and Economic Development. He was promoted in November. Thank you to Town Meeting and Finance Committee members for approving the change of the budget and the department. So I greatly apologize to Mr. Cahill for not introducing him in that fashion at the beginning.
That justifies his shameless plugging of his events. I think it's a wash.
Thank you, Ms. Lass. Yeah, I think so. The other thing is, sorry, I'll just jump right back in. Operational expenses, you can see, have gone up a little bit. That is to account for the new assistant town planner, for membership in the American Planning Association, travel to conferences, which we hope are going to be back in person at the end of this year. Things like stationery, as simple as that. You can see in the earlier budgets during the middle of COVID, our conference spending went way down because they were all webinars. And it was like $50 instead of whatever it usually is, a lot more, $300 or something. We didn't have to travel either, so that helped. I guess any questions about those columns in the budget before I kind of move on to the rest of it, or?
Yeah, actually, I'd rather do it piece by piece. That's
absolutely,
good.
Mr. Chairman.
And we want to address what we've gone over so far in the planning department, understanding that we'll get to the rest of it in a bit. Okay. Anyone from the peanut gallery want to chime in or have any questions? This is a public forum. We love to hear what the public has to say. Tell you what, think about something for the next time. You can ask it then. All right, thank you. Go ahead.
Sure. So I've already mentioned a few of the highlights from our accomplishments. I'll just add a couple more to that list. We completed a comprehensive interdepartmental planning and permitting guide for businesses. This is something that's been in the work for years, but we managed to accomplish it last year with a lot of help from our assistant town planner. This is a guide for businesses and towns who decided we really wanted to help them outside of just land use. We want to take a comprehensive look at all permitting, and like you come in with a new business and you need to go to Board of Health, or if you need to go DPW, it kind of is a roadmap and an information gallery to help you get through the process. We're quite proud of that one. The other thing is we applied for and successfully received a Shared Streets and Spaces grant for the fabrication and installation of wayfinding signs, which you're hopefully are going to see at the end of next month, I think April, if we're in April. No, not quite. End
What
of
are
April,
what are
early-
wayfinding signs?
Wayfinding and branding signs. So we actually had another grant we received 3 or 4 years ago now, and we had a wayfinding and branding committee, and these are going to be for the town center. So they're going to mark the what you'd call the entrances of the town center, or we kind of mark, you know, it's not a perfect mark, but roughly where we believe the cultural town center starts, coming north, south, east, and west. So you'll be seeing those signs up. They say, "Welcome to Shrewsbury." They have a great picture of the town common with, like, you can see like the church with the gazebo. So we're very excited about that. They are being manufactured as we speak. Well, maybe not this time of night, but they are being manufactured right now. And we're very excited about that. You can tell, very excited about that. It's going to be, hopefully look very good. The other thing that we did, which was also quite meticulous, is we went through the master plan and the implementation tasks at the end of the master plan, which is assigned to pretty much every department in town with different tasks. And we went through the tasks line by line with them and got an update on where we are, a snapshot in time about what's been accomplished in the last 5 years. Because I mentioned earlier that master plan is halfway through its life right now. So in about 2.5 years, we'll be looking to start getting ready to update that master plan again. So we want to know, where are we, what's left to go. And we also thought that would help a little bit with the strategic plan as we move forward. There's also, if you want more information, you were handed in your supplemental materials. There's more. But I'll leave it at that for now. The next one's the planning board. I believe this is pretty straightforward, but I'll just hit the big part here is that first line item, salaries and wages of the stipends that the planning board members are budgeted for. You can see some of them, it's, what the actuals are is not every planning board member accepts the stipend. Some of them don't want it, so they just decline it. But it is $1,000 for divided 5 ways for the 5 members of the planning board. And the other one is you'll see a slight uptick in the legal, operational expenses. This is for the legal notice and advertising. We're finding with the special town meeting in the fall, we're doing a lot more advertising and legal notices, which are just not very cheap. And that's pretty much what that's for, is the legal notices. I don't know, yeah. And then to hit some accomplishments from to date is in fiscal year 22 so far, we've the planning board's had 20 site plans and or special permit approvals. Some of those include things as large as Centec Park North, which I believe most of you are familiar with. Also at special town meeting, for those of you who remember, last October, we added a new subsection to the zoning bylaw to establish oversight criteria for wireless communication uses. So those are just some of the highlights from the planning board. And you can see also on this slide, we collected in application fees approximately $40,000. And again, in this fiscal year, that is going to go up as we've received more in projects, and about $188,900 in inspection fees. And again, those are for some of our larger scale projects like Edgemere Crossing and Centec. So any questions about either of those pages for the planning board?
Anyone from the committee? Yeah, go ahead, Dennis.
Just on the inspection fees, you said those are for a lot of big projects. Do we expect that to dip in the next few years, or we have enough projects on board coming up that those fees should stay or continue to grow?
Yeah, I think we have enough projects coming on board. There's quite a few in the pipeline that I'm aware of that we anticipate coming this year. There's a few large warehousing and distribution projects. There's a few housing projects. There's a senior housing project we just received funding for, but is not showing up on this quite yet. So yeah, we expect the projects to continue. It's pretty busy out there.
So we're expecting still a lot of growth for the town.
Yeah, commercial and residential.
Donna?
Have you gotten through all the zoning changes and all the stuff for town meeting yet?
In what way do you mean got through?
Well, it seems that there's been a lot of updating, which was definitely needed. I just wondered how much more needs to be updated, or are we getting there?
That's a great question. I mean, I think we'll always be tweaking it slightly, and that's kind of what you're going to see at this town meeting. We're trying to kind of hone in and really narrow our focus on small things that can have big impacts. Whether we're gonna do a wholesale overhaul of the zoning bylaw, probably not at this time. I think we're in a pretty good shape. Again, we're gonna start looking through different sections and see kind of if we can't, again, just really bring a fine tooth comb to some of these parts that could be cleaned up. And some of it's just process, right? We're trying to make it, like, we just recently overhauled kind of how we do outdoor dining approvals. We got rid of the special permit with the Zoning Board of Appeals because we just found it too onerous for businesses and not necessary and not, quite frankly, a good use of ZBA members' time.
Yeah.
So we made it an internal staff process, and we think it's gonna go a lot smoother. So there's those types of process things that we're really looking at.
So you're having a lot of work and a lot of focus at the center of town. What's your plan after you get through with the center? I mean, there's a whole town that probably needs to be looked at, lots of corners.
Yep. No.
What's your plan?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've already kind of started looking at the other parts of the town. The Edgemere neighborhood is one I'm particularly interested, so we're turning our focus down there, as well as Route 9. We're in discussions right now with the Lakeway Business District Association to see what their needs are, to see what we can do from a planning side to help bolster kind of that. For those of you who don't know, that's about from where the Reliant Plaza is, Marketplace, Shrewsbury, on down to the river, to the lake. And so we are in discussions with them to say, what can we do to help? We're also in, Ms. Lass and I have been discussing it, and Mr. Mizikar, perhaps a second role for the Shrewsbury Development Corporation. We found they really are a wealth of knowledge and some really active people and have some really interesting responsibilities and powers that we could, the last 20 years have been focused so much on Centec. We're like, can we not maybe morph them into something else townwide that can't be an advocate for businesses across the town? So we are looking outside the town center. I know it does seem like we've focused a lot on it, and we have, in fairness, for the last few years.
It was needed. I just meant.
Yeah, no, and I think we're,
more.
and we are, I totally agree with you. And I think we're in a really great place now to, we can continue those efforts, but I think we are going to now move on. And I think having things like the Community Preservation Committee up and running, I think that's great. And getting the Affordable Housing Trust up as well. I think that's gonna be huge, and we are gonna have to, we're gonna want to look across town for opportunities for those. So great points, and I totally agree with you, and we are heading that way.
Thank you.
I had a follow-up question. You mentioned commercial and residential. Are we seeing a increase in commercial versus percentage versus residential, or are we still mostly residential?
So I would actually say we've seen a pretty good mix. We've seen a good amount of senior housing coming in, 55+ housing. I don't know the percentage. I've not done the percentage of commercial versus residential. But we are seeing there's a big trend across all of central Massachusetts for like warehousing and distribution that is big, as we all know. Anyone who does any online shopping, that's where it comes from, that demand. So we are seeing a lot of that, and that's across the region. So logistics centers and the like. We are seeing some move on some medical facilities, but it's like more of the Reliant type scale. And we've seen some investments in like 800 Boston Turnpike at Sativa, who are doing really well. And they've expanded parking, and they've done some interior work as well. So we're seeing quite a mix. But residential's across this part of the state. So
I know
no
we've
question.
talked for years now to increase commercial, so I just want to see if we're moving in that direction. Or
Are you talking about the tax base
Tax
split? Can you speak to that?
That, yeah.
Yeah, it will be a continued challenge, right? We're like 87-13, so it takes a lot to continue to move that needle. But we are, I think, seeing as much commercial growth right now as we've seen probably in the last 20 years. But the interesting part is residential is even stronger, right? Like, you see that in the newspaper, the business journals every day about apartment community sales and prices, and home builder, big, article in the paper today, the Telegram today about, single family homes and things like that. So, I think Mr. Cahill captured it correctly. There's a strong mix out there right now.
Thank you. Anyone else on the committee have anything? Anyone in the comfy seats for Mr. Cahill? Any questions? All right, thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Are we gonna go straight to building?
Yes.
Okay.
So I'd just like to introduce the inspectors of buildings, Patty Sheehan, to come before you this evening. She'll talk about the building inspector budget and the zoning board of appeals budget. So welcome, Patty. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Hello. Just gonna get papers up. So I'm Patty Sheehan. I've been the building commissioner here since 2010. I've been here since 1996, so working in the building inspector's office. So I've been here for quite a long time, and I've seen a lot of changes. And when you're asking the question, have we seen a lot of commercial changes? I've never had 84 commercial permits here in 2021 as we did. It was quite a change, and it's quite an exciting time. You know, Bernie was talking to you about wayfinding signs, and he's getting excited about that. I have a lot of exciting things that have happened here in town, and maybe not as exciting to you when I talk like kind of code language, but our town is really changing and growing, and that is really a challenge for my department. And I really have a very nice staff that I'd like to tell you about. So as you can see from the information on the slides, that, you know, we had in permitted value of work of over $153 million, you know, last year, with over 4,500 permits submitted. So that's an, you know, awful lot of high volume coming into our office. You know, we always like to report 49 new single-family homes, 3 new two-family homes, but the fees collected, you know, is over $1.5 million, which again is nothing that we've seen before. When we had the Lakeway Commons project, I saw slightly over $1 million, and I got very excited about that. And now here we are, you know, at $1.5 million of fees collected, and basically that results in a lot of work in my department with project types that I haven't seen before. But as you can see from my budget, I have, you know, just heavily, my budget is all salaries because I have 6.5 people on staff, which is about $440,000 for the budget for salaries. I have an operational budget of $51,000, which is really just things to support the staff. So I do want to tell you something about the staff in the office, since you know, all of us work together as a team. We share an office now with the planning department, which is really very nice. You know, a cooperative effort that we have. The 2 new assistant planners, that's a nice addition to our office staff, and we're growing because every time someone comes in, I ask, where are they going to sit, is the first thing I ask. But as far as the plumbing and gas inspector goes, we have Joe Riley, who's been with us since 2014, and Dale Blue, electrical inspector, who came on with us in 2019, because you may know that prior to 2019, the electrical inspector worked out of Selco and did not work under the building inspector. So this has been a great change for us. I think it's more efficient for the town, and these 2 inspectors have a lot of field experience, a lot of knowledge of the codes, and they provide a lot of valuable insight to different types of projects. In addition to that, 2 building inspectors. Very fortunate to have 2 building inspectors to work with, Alex Moriarty and John Zakarevich. So I've been trying to get 2 building inspectors for quite a while, and now working with them, it makes a huge difference to be able to manage all of the projects in town. The administrative assistants, Emily Larson, who I do share with the planning department, and Kristen Rapolo, really essential, right, to making the office work, because it is a high-volume office, and they really, with their experience, they have a lot of expertise to be able to answer questions about permitting systems, about our permitting system, and about permits. So with them, I'm obviously the building commissioner, and I lead the team, but I take pride in the education that all of us have. I was recently appointed by Governor Baker to the Board of Fire Prevention Regulations. So not only do I work with the building code, but I also work with the fire code. That was just started last month. I'm also the president of the Massachusetts Building Officials, and I talk with the commissioner of the Division of Licensure, the commissioner of the Department of Energy. I talk about changes that are going to come to our code requirements and that will impact our municipality. So I keep on top of those things, and I also teach the code in a local vocational school. So I teach people who are in the field, who are going to get their license, who are going to come to me to get a permit. So kind of the best of both worlds, teaching them how to come and apply for a permit. It's always not the easiest thing, and different municipalities have different ways of doing things. Even though it's the same state building code, I have to keep repeating, but we do things a little bit differently sometimes. So the things that I'm really excited about with my staff working on all of these projects, we had 3 unique projects that I really wanted to tell you about. And the new Beal School, I was so excited when that Beal School came in and I found out we were going to have a type 1B building. That means it's the highest fire rated building that we have in town. So I haven't had one of those before. That was a really good project to work on, always looking to learn and grow. So now what do we get? Our police station, right? Never had an I3 use group before, which is a jail. I'm always working on how, when I review a permit application, how can I get people out of the building safely? Now I have to keep people in some ways and also work with the life safety systems, right? Because you don't always let them out as soon as the life safety feature goes off. So then we also have, now everyone knows about Edgemere. Edgemere, when this project came in, first thing they did is they knew the project developers and the architect knew they had an unusual situation that isn't always built before. So we have wood frame buildings. That's what we get a lot. I get a little nervous about wood frame buildings, for residential uses, but that is what is allowed by the code. And one of the things that's unique to these buildings is they have a single means of egress. Massachusetts is always very restrictive, 2 means of egress. This is built in a certain way that allows a single means of egress. So the way that we inspect these buildings, the way that we review the permits, and the way that other life safety features come into play in these buildings is very important. So again, we have 2 of them now have received certificates of occupancy, 2 out of 9, 7 more to go. So when we do our inspections on these for final inspections, you'd see that we have all the firefighters that are on that shift come with us. All of my inspectors come with us, and we really have a system in place on how we inspect these buildings. So with those three projects that I wanted to bring to your attention, I wanted to kind of explain to you how we go from a concept of a project to a certificate of occupancy, kind of like how a bill becomes a law, right? So there's a lot of steps in between and a lot of things that have to be explained to project representatives. So I'm the last person in the line. I'm the last person that is going to be issuing a certificate of occupancy. With a project such as Edgemere, there are so many other departments that the project representatives have to go through. They have to go through DPW, Board of Health, Planning, Conservation, Zoning, Board of Selectmen, the Assessor, Selco. All of those departments, almost all of them, have to be involved in the project up front. Once the different departments implement the things that they have control over, the next steps are that they would come to the building inspector's office for all the permitting. Electrical, plumbing, gas, fire protection, building permits, mechanical permits. All of those permits are needed for each building. Then what will happen is once the permits are issued, of course the project starts. My inspectors are in the field constantly. You can imagine, we have dedicated times slotted for Edgemere. We have many other commercial projects going on, but just use that as an example. We give them dedicated times when we will come out and we save slots for them for inspections to keep their project moving. The state of Massachusetts building code, it's very challenging, to navigate. There's a lot of code volumes. Massachusetts heavily amends it and puts in Massachusetts amendments. Fire protection systems are more restrictive in Massachusetts than anywhere else. So we want to be well-versed in that. That's kind of why I'm involved in the Board of Fire Prevention Regulations. Life safety is a priority for the Building Inspector's Department. So once the project is nearing completion, final inspections, collecting of documents is very important. And it's very important that all of the building inspectors, staff, electrical, plumbing, gas, that they all come together and I have all of the information appropriate and deem it safe to issue a certificate of occupancy. So it's a lot of work from start to finish that goes into a project like that. The building commissioner's role in a municipality is a very important public safety role. And so all of the occupancies in town, not only new projects, renovation of existing projects, annual inspections, that's our primary role, is to make sure that we're doing our jobs to ensure that, the public is safe, that building owners, property owners have the right information when they want to do their projects. So, I'll take any questions that you have.
Thank you. Vikram.
Thank you. That was a very wonderful presentation. Thank you for the work you do. Thank you to your department. I was wondering about any departments as far as disabilities. Do you have any consideration for those when you do occupancy certificates as well?
Sure, so as a building commissioner, by Mass General Law, I am the enforcer. I enforce, 521 CMR, Architectural Access Board Rules and Regulations. So for any public building, I do that. I review all building permits for accessibility. So again, if we go to the Edgemere project, a certain percentage of those units have to be accessible. Anything else that we do, such as, a retail store, church, school, town hall, anything like that does have to be accessible. So any project, any alteration that's conducted, I have to review it for that code.
Thank you.
Is that it? Donna?
Patty,
Building commissioner.
That's okay.
how many actual major projects do you have going on right now?
So we keep a running list. I'll say that I have about 20 right now going on.
Major projects.
Right. Yep, so you know what's some of the most challenging ones are we have a lot of tenant fit-ups because we have a lot of existing commercial spaces where a new tenant will come in. Those new tenants have to be mindful of what their existing fire alarm and sprinkler systems are that they are tying into. Again, handicap accessibility. Those tenant fit-ups are very challenging dealing with existing building systems and making sure that they have the right design information. Yeah, we have a lot of, as Bernie was talking about though, we have a lot of warehouses coming. We have a lot of warehouse, a couple right now under permit, but more coming.
And so with that, what will be different about what you do? Just warehouse rules, warehouse codes?
Yeah, so what is challenging is they'll build the shell. So we permit the shell. Now tenants are going to come. So the tenants may have a little bit different design criteria than what the shell was set up for. So when a tenant comes in, it's challenging to make sure that the design engineers and the tenant engineers can work together to get the right permits submitted for the tenant.
Okay. So as far as your funding goes, it looks like you weren't asking for anything beyond what was acceptable. Do I have that right?
Well, what I would like is, so eventually, as we see the planning department is growing, and we have, a lot of work in town under the building inspector's office, we, planning and building, share one of the two admins in our office. So eventually, I would think that the building inspector's office would have two, and the planning department would have one, so that we would have a total of 3 admins in our office, which would be very helpful in sometime in the future.
So right now, you'll have 1.5?
Right now, we have 1.5.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're halfway there?
Halfway, but she does the work to keep us all going, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Donna. Judy?
This is just a comment, but one of the things I want to say is I'm really happy. I really enjoyed your presentation, and it's nice to hear about the accomplishments and how your staff is working together as a team. I mean, there's been so many years where, that it was such a struggle and you weren't getting the staff that you need. So I'm really happy to see that that's happening, and thank you for all the work that you do.
Thank you.
Do you have capital budget or equipment that you need, computer software programs, et cetera, to make it easier? Or is that something that would make your life easier?
So we do have an online permitting system. Shrewsbury is very advanced in how we have that available to us. And I have to say, I probably presented last year during COVID, that was essential for us to have that. So it doesn't come out of my budget, but I am looking for help to maintain that software, and we're getting there, I believe. It's hopefully,
Trying.
yeah. It's an essential tool, but we need maintenance of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I was getting at. It didn't seem like there was a lot of money being asked for that, and that seems to be.
It's not in my budget though, but somewhere it is.
It's
So-
in the IT, it's in the IT budget, yeah. We are looking to onboard a business systems analyst. We're recruiting like everyone else in the world is right now, so.
Okay, anyone else on the committee?
Yes.
Yeah, Carlos?
Thank you for the presentation. I was curious if you had like a local inventory of the short-term rentals like Airbnbs and such. Do you have that data?
So we don't have that data, and we don't permit them as Airbnbs. So they are single-family houses right now, and we're aware of them because obviously we can search for them and find out which ones are around, but we don't permit them as Airbnbs.
I can add to that as well. The state does have an inventory that we review from time to time, but not every Airbnb user actually files with that inventory or files their taxes properly. So we can certainly get you that information. I haven't run the report in several months.
Thank
I
you.
think that'd be handy if you can put that in our, I guess, the Google Drive. I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd be curious to see that because I know a few years ago we voted on requiring them to have sprinklers, I think, and we defeated that. So
It was on the warrant article. We were not prepared to bring it forward, so we did not move forward at that time. It was really for boarding houses. It was not specifically for Airbnbs or short-term
Okay.
rentals, but there might have been a discussion about that, but we'll certainly get you that information.
Awesome. Thank you.
Actually, just to follow up on the Airbnb, do they fall into like a hotel where we would get some of the tax if we did have an inventory?
Not that I'm aware.
No, it's a state tax, it's not a local tax. We have not put a local tax. There is an ability for the town of Shrewsbury to do that, but we have not instilled that.
Is that something we should look into?
I see at least one selectman in the back of the room nodding.
I'm
I would,
happy to.
yeah, I
happy
would just
to
have to
see
see, I know with the registration, they're, they have to be used so many days. I would just have to familiarize myself before answering, but it's something we can look into.
I think with the growing trend, I think it would make sense for us to explore that.
Thank you, Judy. Any other questions from the committee? Anyone in the back would love to ask questions? Now's your chance for the building inspector's department. All right.
Could I just add
Yes,
a
go
little
ahead.
comment about the zoning board of appeals?
Please.
It just has a small budget, and the assistant town planner, Rowan McAllister, is staffing the zoning board of appeals, and again, very fortunate to have her. The zoning board of appeals has been very busy, so we have a lot of challenging residential properties, as you know, non-conforming properties. So in some, properties also, projects that have kind of, a lot of, need a lot of review. So I am the zoning enforcement officer, and I review the permit applications or the zoning applications with Rowan, and really the budget is just for the staff.
Okay. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Patty.
Covers the Board of, Does that cover the Board of Appeals? We can move on?
Yeah, that was Board of.
Okay. Then, Board of Health.
So if I may, I'd just like to give a brief overview of our human services budget, just for a global perspective, and then certainly invite Ms. Clark to the table. She can come up now if she's ready for Board of Health. As you'll see in the description in the slides, human services is related to our Health Department, Council on Aging, Veterans, Commission on Disability, and Library. In fiscal '23, we're going to bring Parks and Recreation on board to the Human Services divisions, and Parks Maintenance Department will stay within DPW. You'll hear more about that in concept and in detail on Saturday when they come before you. In total, there are a little over 41 staff for Human Services, and you will see below that the library takes up the majority of that budget. Parks Maintenance would be that second, and the Council on Aging would be third. In total, it's about a $3.1 million budget. So I will turn that over to the Director of Public Health, who's also the Director of Public Health for the City of Worcester, and Staff's Department Director position in our four other Alliance communities. So welcome, Ms. Clark.
Thank you. Good evening. Nice to be here, and I see some new faces. So I'm Karen Clark. As Ms. Loss said, the Director of Public Health for the City of Worcester and the Central Mass Regional Public Health Alliance. We, I think, are going on our 13th year. Wow, that means we're 13 years older. Being a regionalized health department. And Dan Morgado was pretty forward-thinking, probably 15 years ago, about looking at growing capacity in the area of public health. And certainly Mr. Mizikar has and Ms. Loss have continued that passion and commitment, certainly through the pandemic. I think we've all been on speed dial quite extensively. So I'll just take a step back. So I direct about, I think it'll be 30 full-time employees at the Division of Public Health. A number of them are dispatched to our Alliance communities to provide public health services. So you'll see here on the budget, I'll just step back on that for a second. So the $56,811 is for the principal department assistant, which is obviously a Shrewsbury employee, but the rest of the staff is from Worcester, and really the cost of the IMA includes not only the Director of Public Health and a Deputy Director of Public Health, excuse me, but also a medical director, an epidemiologist, public health nursing, community health staff. So they do a lot of work around mental health, substance use disorder, built environment, healthy eating, active living. We also have an environmental health team. Some of you may have seen Julie Van Arsdalen here and Micah Blondo, who are primarily here in Shrewsbury doing environmental health work, everything from nuisance inspections, hoarding, food and housing inspections, you name it. They're responding to complaints and doing all kinds of inspections, which you'll see on the next slide. We also have an emergency preparedness office. So the Division of Public Health is actually a health and medical coordinating coalition. So we're one of a handful of municipalities across Massachusetts that coordinates public health emergency response through, we have 11 hospitals, I believe, and 74 boards of health in Central Mass. So my chief of emergency preparedness is responsible for ensuring that basically our partners, medical partners and Board of Health partners in Central Mass have equipment, PPE training to be able to respond to public health emergencies. And certainly we certainly utilized all of that during the last 2 years, and we are the point person or point organization to liaise up to Mass DPH to make sure that if a hospital's on code black, if patients need to be transferred to different facilities because the power's out, we coordinate all of that on the ground for Central Massachusetts. So we also support 5 boards of health. I provide a lot of policy technical assistance and certainly have during COVID, but also looking at tobacco control, making sure that we're always thinking about our young people not getting access, and looking at responding to environmental tobacco smoke complaints, such as smoke-free workplace complaints, et cetera. So essentially, for this year's budget, what we did is we did a 2% increase, which is what we've typically done over the years. But we also added $1 a person, which is what we did last year. And did that again with using the increase in the census to again create another dollar person. What we're doing right now, which kind of ties to our accomplishments, I should say goals, for FY23 is we received some funding from Mass DPH from a public health excellence grant. There were opportunities for communities to apply to get funding to start trying to figure out how to become regional health districts, which is something that we've been doing for 13 years. So we're a little bit ahead of the game. So we said, well, we've been doing this for a long time. We'd really like to get a consultant to really look at doing a cost analysis, because our scope of what we're responsible for under public health has grown exponentially since the beginning of time, it seems like, but certainly over the last couple of years. And I think, you know, one of the things that Mr. Mizikar has said, and we've had multiple conversations about the cost of kind of doing business with the city and what all this looks like, is in the beginning, this was really about a cost savings model, and it's really about getting the best services at this point for residents. I think people have really seen value added of public health. It's been a little strange over the last couple of years to go from heroes to having people really being upset about masks. That's been a hot topic, obviously. But there's so much more that we do and can do. So we're excited that we're going to be looking at really coming up with a business plan and really engaging with town leadership in the towns in our alliance to talk about and the boards of health on what's working well, what isn't, how can we continuously look at improvement, which is a cornerstone of what we do at DPH, because, and it doesn't get old, and I'm going to use the bragging rights again, but we were the first nationally accredited health department, regional health department in Massachusetts in 2016, which means that we hit every single measure. There were 100 of them. It took us 3 years to get ready to apply. That accreditation is really about constant quality improvement to what we're doing. Our accreditation was 5 years. We had to ask for an extension for reaccreditation because we were in the middle of a pandemic, and we just really didn't have the time to kind of do that. So we're in the process of reaccreditation now, which obviously Shrewsbury will be part of, which is really exciting to be able to say that we are accredited and are becoming reaccredited. We also, and I would just say as far as an accomplishment, in order to even be accredited, you have to be data-driven as a health department. So we've done a robust community health assessment, which I think will be very helpful for your town's strategic plan. But also we do community health improvement plans, which we just came out with our latest one that Shrewsbury is a part of. And it's really a 5-year blueprint on how we're going to improve health across the Alliance through policies and initiatives and strategies. So really excited that we're going to be starting to bring that out to the communities and engage community on how they can be part of this. Mostly, the last chip was really specific about health equity. This one is really specific to racial equity, which is really reflective of the times. And I don't think with everything that's happened with COVID and really examining the social determinants of health and people of color being significantly impacted by COVID, that we have to have these conversations. And the CHIP does a really nice job of having that as a theme throughout all the work that we're going to be doing. So if we can just look, thank you. So just looking at all of the data that's been provided by Kerry Stockwell and Julie and others, you can see that despite having a pandemic happening in the background, there still was an awful lot of work that happened. So I'm obviously not going to go through all of this, but you can see that we have a lot of big projects going on. There were still responses to, folks not being compliant with the mask requirement, so those had to be followed up on. We also do biannual youth health survey. So we furnish the funds and work with UMass Prevention Research Center. So we work with all of the towns in the Alliance to do youth surveys with middle and high school youth so that we can really get a sense of what the positive and risky behaviors are. And then we get those results, we share them with the school and others and have a conversation with community about how we're going to sort of custom tailor some of our prevention strategies so that we can ensure that, it's not one size fits all, the work that we do. So we want to look at the local data and see where we need to work with the school and other community members to really make a difference. And then you can just see on the right side, I'm just pulling out different things because there's a lot here, the amazing amount of work that Julie and Micah are able to do, and all of the work that Kerry does just to kind of triage and be air traffic control with all of the questions that come in and all of the complaints and all of the different things that come under public health that we triage on a daily basis. So that's a little bit about what we do. It's a lot, but it's been a pleasure working with Shrewsbury. Definitely very invested, and we're very fortunate that we have a long-standing, really positive relationship, and I'm looking forward to continuing that.
Thank you. Members of the committee have questions? Dennis, go ahead.
You mentioned you're data-driven. Is that data publicly available?
So we have the community health assessment, so yes, that's absolutely available. We have a 2018 and a 2021, so I'm happy to share that information.
I didn't know if there's like a website or something and you can.
Yeah, we're actually updating our website right now because of, one of the other things I think is really important is our city manager nicely said to us for last year, you really need your own communications person because of COVID, we were stealing his people all the time. So we do have a communication specialist now for the Alliance, which is super helpful to do social media and messaging. But he's working on putting information together on the CHA and the CHIP that we're gonna replicate for all of the Alliance towns, so it'll be on your website probably within the next week or so.
Oh, great. Okay.
We'd love to see that when that's up. I
Sure.
hope the town manager's office shamelessly plugs that and definitely lets
Plug it.
everyone know what there is to see and how we can all access that information. And thank you, Dennis, for that question.
Sure.
Donna?
So, certainly, we've seen the value added, okay? And so thank you for that. We've also seen the cost go up, but your tentacles have really reached into the community on a lot of issues. I don't know how you survived all of the data collection for positive COVIDs and so forth. I don't know how you did it.
A lot of coupling of volunteers and getting grants for contact tracers, working with Noel Freeman, the school nurses. I mean, it took a village, it really did.
So how many nurses do you have?
So we have 4 full-time nurses. Our chief of public health nursing just retired on her birthday last Friday. And kudos to her, Pat Bruckman, absolute rock star. We then promoted our deputy chief of public health nursing, Amelia Houghton, into her slot. We also have another nurse who is union and specifically covers Worcester. We have a regional public health nurse vacancy, which I am trying, and the city manager has agreed, we're regrading it before the budget season because I'm upping the salary for that, and also for the now vacant deputy chief of public health nursing. The salaries were just not competitive, and obviously there's a major retirement exodus going on, and public health was really hard. It was hard on public health over the last 2 years, and I've seen a lot of colleagues across the state and people on my own staff retire. So we have 2 vacancies right now.
So you have 2 vacancies, that means you only have 2 nurses for 5 towns?
We don't, so Millbury and West Boylston have their own public health nurse. So we provide public health nursing for Worcester, Shrewsbury, and Grafton.
Okay, and how many of those nurses just have to work in Worcester, based on population?
Out of the 4 positions,
Yeah.
only one is designated specifically
You
for
did,
Worcester.
yeah, you did say that, but is that even reasonable?
No, it's a
no.
municipal government. It's
So
just
I don't
the
have
way
to
it
say
is.
anymore. I mean,
No.
clearly, Worcester has been notoriously short on nurses over the years, and trying to accomplish so many things. So you mentioned emergency preparedness. How do you work with the town, or how do you plan over the next year to work with the towns with emergency preparedness?
So through the HMCC grant that we have, which again is Region 2, so that's really all of Central Mass, we get funding from Mass DPH to hire, well, we can do this any way we want, but we hire 4 consultants that work in the quadrants. They break it up, they bid on it, and they're responsible for doing emergency dispensing site plans for all of the communities. So Shrewsbury is included in that. It has an actual planner that's dedicated. This is how we've done it for years. And there are deliverables that have to be met by each community. And so every year we conduct a drill, and we pull in different people from Shrewsbury, from the different town departments and our staff, and basically do a mock event. We've been doing this pretty much since 9/11, when the CDC and the state started dumping money into local public health, seeing what the public health response would be in certain situations. So we have been actually planning and responding through tabletop exercises or through doing these drills every year at EDS dispensing sites for pandemic. So when this pandemic started, we knew exactly what to do.
Right.
Unfortunately, the politics got in the way, so after we had our senior center regional emergency dispensing site open for 3 months, we were told to stand down, and then the Worcester State site got set up, and so we lost sort of some local control over being able to offer vaccinations to the Alliance in a central location at the Worcester Senior Center. So we do a lot of trainings, we plan for shelter operations. A lot of the work that we do is in alignment with emergency management. So our chief of emergency preparedness has relationships with all of the emergency management directors all over Central Mass, and certainly here in Shrewsbury as well.
So do you have any number as to how many Shrewsbury people go to Commercial Street for testing or
At the
vaccination?
Mercantile?
Yeah.
We do have data on how many people have used it.
I'd be curious to know how many people from Shrewsbury actually go there, because I don't view that myself as a convenient location. It may be if you live in Worcester, but I don't believe it is for Shrewsbury.
So that is a contract that UMass holds with Mass DPH. That's not anything that we had any control over. The state was very specific about where they installed Stop the Spread testing sites throughout Massachusetts. So they're gonna actually be winding down. I think May 15th, they're closing up shop, or might have a smaller footprint somewhere else. I definitely can talk with my epidemiologist and see if she can run a report, or I can talk to UMass to see if they have the capability of pulling out Shrewsbury addresses.
I'd be curious to see if people actually took advantage of that, or if they had the same reaction I did to it, that's all. Restaurant inspections, how is that working over the past year? Are you accomplishing it, or are you, because you've had so many conflicting issues with COVID pulling people in different directions, I didn't know if you could keep up with it.
So we never went home. A lot of people went home. We did not go home. We've worked 7 days a week for the last 2 years. There's still data that comes out every day. Kristen and Kevin will tell you, I send emails every day about your case counts. And if there's any changes or any new guidance that seem to come out every 30 minutes from the governor's office or from Mass DPH, we're always synthesizing, we're always trying to figure out how to communicate that best to the Alliance and also to your residents so they can understand what's happening, because it's just constantly changing, or at least it was. Yes, we still continue to do everything, pretty much throughout the whole entire pandemic, which I really give a lot of credit to our staff and also any public health, inspector or any inspector that had to continue to go out and do inspections and put themselves at risk, especially early on when we just didn't know, we didn't have a vaccine. So I give them a lot of credit. They're really the heroes in this.
And my last question is on shops collection. I think there needs to be a lot of education on that, including to, like doctor's offices, because people just automatically say, oh, bring your shops to CVS, and CVS says, don't bring them here. So people don't know where to bring their shop.
Right, so by law, municipalities have to have some way to dispose of sharps, but if you're a medical facility, you should definitely have your own pickup and your own, nobody should be like transferring things or handling things.
Medical facilities clearly do. And so if someone has shops, the only way they can get rid of them is to, what I think is a bad thing, is people put them in coffee cans or whatever to dispose of them, or sneak them into your next appointment and drop them off at the, medical facility. But there's no place. A lot of towns have places where you can bring shops. Shrewsbury doesn't.
Yeah, we do, it's in the Board of Health office.
People don't know that.
Oh, they do, because
We're overflowing with
they're
sharp.
overflowing.
And it's amazing because
schools bring
doctors'
their-
offices don't even give you that information.
And the
They have
schools
no idea.
also use the kiosk here as well. Any medical facility should have their own biohazard waste pickup. They should not be using the municipal stream. It's really for residents.
No, I think she's saying
No.
the doctor's offices are telling residents they could go to CVS.
And
CVS
they,
doesn't take
they're
them.
giving them the wrong information because they don't have the information.
I see what
I
you're
think
saying.
doctors' offices need to be able to instruct people where to bring the stuff, and they don't know.
So I've sat on the Worcester District Medical Society Public Health Committee for probably 15 years, and that's really a great way to get out information. So we can certainly, at the next committee, that might be an option, just to say, how can you help us get it, information out? Because it's a problem everywhere, for sure.
It's not just here. I mean,
Oh,
even in other hospitals where I
get it.
work, if you
Yeah.
test people and ask them, they have no idea. They don't know
Agreed.
what to tell people.
That's right, I agree 100%.
That's all.
Thank you,
I think you guys have been of value to us.
thank you.
Other members of the Finance Committee have questions
Got it.
for health? Any members of the traveling public? Just because you're the library director doesn't mean you can't ask questions. What the hell, Priya? Okay, that's fine. All right, then, thank you very much.
Thank you, have a good night. Thank you.
All right, Kevin?
Yep.
Good to see you.
Too.
The last three items at the end of our agenda, Operating Support and Finance Committee and Personnel Board, I know they don't take all that long, but can we push them till Saturday, just because we're a little bit behind schedule? I want to make sure the rest of the program still,
Yeah, if we need
It's
to,
done.
or we can stay tonight, whatever you want to do.
Get it done tonight, because we're gonna have enough on Saturday.
oh, Saturday is such fun though, Don.
It is.
Okay, y'all want to keep at it?
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine. Anyhow, we're still, regardless, moving to the Council on Aging.
So I'd like to introduce Holly Luke, the Council on Aging Director. This is her third Finance Committee budget hearing with you, but only her second, and she was only a few months in her first. And she will introduce herself and the members of the Council on Aging who are here with you this evening.
Yes, good evening. My name is Holly Luke. I'm the Council on Aging Director, and I started here in January 2000. And I do have some of my Council on Aging board with me. So I have Jean Capaniello, did I say it right? And Shashi Mendez, and Alex Roman, Lori Jones, thank you, and Betsy Zueg in the back with me. And I apologize, two of them I knew, so that was the first time seeing them myself. So I just want to start by saying that it was super difficult for me, first off, to come up with only 2 slides to be able to present everything that the Council on Aging and the Senior Center has done in the past 3 years, 1 year, 2 years. So I'm happy to take any additional questions for anything that I'm not able to present on the slides. So what I would like to begin with is, so you asked for accomplishments. And we have had a lot of accomplishments. And one of them, just as if you just heard from Karen Clark, we were able to assist over 1,000 residents, not only seniors in Shrewsbury, to get their COVID vaccines and to follow up with their booster shots, and to just offer the regular vaccine information. So we're super proud that we've been able to do that, and half of that was through part of our human leadership team, which is extremely valuable for the town of Shrewsbury, in my opinion. One of the other things that we were able to do is we were able to resume Triad, and we currently have 8 partner departments and external partnerships, and some of them which you already heard from tonight. And just briefly, those are the COA, the Fire, Police, Library, Board of Health, Elder Services of Worcester, and Shrewsbury Youth and Family Services. We meet once a month for that particular group. And what we do is we try to figure out the best way to reach our seniors at home that might be of risk to really anything that comes up to their quality of life. And we sit and we talk about it, and then we brainstorm. We come back the next month and we follow up and move on from that. So my outreach coordinator, Renee D'Argento, has been doing an extremely just a fantastic job in making sure that we stay on track with the Triad, and we're looking forward to seeing how far we can build and hopefully bring this to other towns to just show them the things that we're doing with that. Through COVID, we recognized that there was a food insecurity, and we were able to develop our food sharing pantry, which is not only supplemental to our seniors in Shrewsbury, but also for emergency assistance for the rest of the community. So I have spoken with both fire and police, and they understand that they can come over to our food sharing pantry, which is held at the senior center, at any time that they should need to, and they can collect any items that they need. The only thing that we ask is that they follow up with us and just let us know what did they take, and we don't even need to know who it went to, but just so we can replenish the things that are inside our food sharing pantry. And that food comes through we're super lucky, the Council on Aging Department, because we have a gift fund that has been able to enable us to buy the things and to support the programs and the services that we offer out of the senior center, and as well as donations. And we also work very closely with St. Anne's Food Pantry. So we've been able to do things like that. One of the other things that I'm super happy about is that through the help of Betsy Zueg, who is a board member, she got us an opportunity to work with Quinsigamond Community College. And this year, for the 7 months, we had an outreach intern, and his name is Lucas Kuhn. And he's helped us with various projects that we've had, either through the Council on Aging and the Senior Center. And I always try to divide the two, because the Senior Center is open Monday through Friday, 8 to 4:30, but the Council on Aging Department is a 24/7 type of department that we work through. So there's a lot of moving parts that just doesn't stop at 4:30. So Lucas has been able to work beyond the hours and come back to us and really, really grow our outreach program. So we're looking to do that every single year, and I'm hoping to get not only one intern, but 2. My primary goal for 2023 is to continue with the staff that I have. I have a fantastic staff, 3 full-time employees. Cynthia Willis, Transportation, she's been with the town for, I believe, 24 years. Patricia Babin, she is a retired officer, also from the Shrewsbury Police Department. She's been with us. As well as Donna Messier, she worked for Selco for many years, so she's over with us. And as I already mentioned, we have Renee D'Argento, so she is our outreach coordinator. She started in August. And then our office assistant, Christine Moriarty, who has been with us for almost 2 years and just brings so much life and energy, it's hard to keep up with her. So for the goal is for us is to maintain the FY22 successes that we have. And I missed the conversation that you had about the grants, but we did a fantastic job, I think, and I pat all of my staff on the back for the grants that we gave. We brought in just under $180,000 in addition to our general fund this past year. And I couldn't have done it with my entire staff and the volunteers because they help even with all of the little extra work. And we currently have just over, I think, 82 volunteers that work with us. And we're having a volunteer appreciation next month. If anybody wants to come, you are certainly welcome.
Want to tell us when that is?
That is April 25th. It is a Monday. It starts at 11 o'clock. And it's a well-deserved appreciation because we've gone 3 years without it. So it's going to be fantastic. So please come if you can. Please RSVP so I make sure you have a meal. And the other part of the goals that I have is that there was a strategic plan that was developed before I arrived in 2019. And one of the parts of the strategic plan was to eventually have a marketing plan. And when I went into it, I had no idea what a marketing plan was. So I begged, borrowed, stole from everybody that I could possibly get a hold of. And I'm in the process of developing it. And one of the things that I found is that the marketing plan is helping me with all of my grants because I can copy and paste and put it into a grant when they ask me where is the funding coming or who are you working with. So it's really been a great addition, as far as I'm concerned, to the work that I do every single day. I'm not yet ready to share that, but it's coming out, I promise you. To just go forward, I won't talk about every line item for the salaries, but one of the things that I did ask for FY23 request was that I was looking for an additional full-time employee over at the senior center. But the other thing I was looking for is, so as I mentioned, Christine Moriarty, she works full-time. She works 37.5 hours, and her salary was coming half out of our general fund and half out of our formula grant. One of the things that made me nervous about that is no grant is guaranteed, ever. And then if that grant doesn't happen, how do I keep her? So I did put in the request to have her whole salary come out of the general fund. And that, in turn, opens up some additional funds out of the formula grant, in which case I'm in the process of making some proposals to both Kevin and Kristen. Does anybody have any questions about that before we move on to the different slide?
Anyone on the committee? Anyone in the rest of the room want to chime in or have any questions so far on where we are? Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So as I mentioned before, it's really hard to try to figure out what I was going to present to you today. So what I decided to do was I wanted to show you our transportation because half of our transportation, so we have a 4-van fleet, and 2 of them are governed by the WRTA, and then 2 of them are owned by the town of Shrewsbury. So I wanted to show you kind of where we've been as far as how our transportation has gone. And I think when you look at the slide, it's pretty self-explanatory. When we started to be in COVID, it started to go down. When we started to come up through the certain months, it started to go up. One of the things that you'll notice the red line here in January 2022, right? We start to hit the COVID again. And so we had to go down to where we only had 1 rider at a time on our vehicles. So what we did, we followed, even with our own vans, we followed the WRTA policy. So it was to make our drivers safe, make the riders safe. But at the same time, we were super lucky because as you went back to the grants, we received $40,000 in a taxi livery grant. So nobody went without a ride. They just got a ride a little different. So even though you see a dip on that, that was our dip on ours through using our vans, but not a dip necessarily through the requests of the transportation that came in through our office. The other graph shows, so the circle graph strictly shows the engagement that happens at the senior center. So we have a software system, it's called My Senior Center. You get a little tag, you come in, you scan in, you kind of plug in what you're there for. This shows exactly that. So if you come for exercise, or if you come for congregate dining, or what, ukulele, you're putting it in here. So that shows that. The graph that I wasn't able to show you are all of the outreach things that we do. And we are just, I got the data just before I left, it's just under 7,000 people that we reached just in this past year alone. Some are duplicated, but 7,000 includes happy birthday calls, are you okay, wellness calls, home visits, there's 25 different things that we do for outreach that it doesn't show here. And one of the things, and again, so when you look under the outreach under the second bullet, we had outreach events. We had a summer open house kickoff. One of the grants, we were able to give 50 microwaves to some of our Meals on Wheels recipients who weren't able to heat up their own meals. We also gave away air conditioners. I think one of the most things that I'm proud of is we had a fantastic grab and go Veterans Day event in conjunction with Justin Sousa and the Veteran Services. And we gave out just over 150 veterans meals at no charge to them. They just came and picked them up, and we were all able to thank them for their service. So I think that was one of the, I think since I've been here, it was one of the most rewarding things that I've done on top of all of them. I think that's all I have from the slides, but I'm happy to answer any other questions that anybody might have.
Anyone on the committee have questions of Council on Aging and or the Senior Center? Donna.
You haven't mentioned anything about the issues around space.
Space. You mean
in your building?
At my senior center?
Yep.
So one of the things so the senior center is what it is. So we were a part of the development plan when the police station was going to be built and the town hall. So that, of course, as we all know, the police station is being built. So what we did with our space is we did change one of our office area, and we did pull our outreach and veteran services out to the main lobby so they can be more well seen and better approached. So that has been that's been a complete asset there. One of the other things that we've done is now I came in on January 2020. I have yet to see how the senior center actually runs, right? But what I did before then is I worked with my staff, I worked with the volunteers to figure out what worked before, and of course this goes with everybody what they were saying, and what should we change. So the change was like a slow roll, and now it's to the point where we try not to duplicate too many services. And the other thing is that we try to do is work with outside partnerships, work with other Council on Aging departments, Northborough, Westborough, Southborough, Grafton, our alliance, because we can't offer everything, and I understand that, but other people can, and I can support them. So if that's what I have to do, that's what we have been doing. And we're trying to utilize our outdoor space. So even so last year, because we're in COVID and we had some people that did not want to come into the building, we made accommodations, and we had a tent, and we blocked off the circle driveway to the senior center, which actually worked out really well. This year, we're planning to do half of the same, to block off the circle driveway. We won't have a tent, but to have a safe place outside where we can offer events. So if they want to do yoga out on the front yard, or the fact that we have the circle driveway, it's ADA compliant, so I can move the tables out there. We have the new outdoor raised garden beds. So we're trying to utilize the space that we have to the best of our ability, and if we can't, we share it with somebody else.
Thanks.
Yep.
Okay, anyone else on the committee have questions for the Council of Aging? Anyone in the comfy seats in the back want to ask or address anything? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Commission on Disabilities.
Yep, so I can take that if you want to just go to the next slide. So the Commission on Disabilities is an appointed board by the town manager, and their mission is to help understand and bring to light accommodations that may be necessary for all Shrewsbury residents. Their budget is extremely small and is unchanged from year to year. It's $500. We anticipate that they'll remain at $500 through fiscal '23, but we are proud to say that we received a $100,000 grant from the state to complete an ADA transition plan, which reviews all of our town buildings, outdoor space, and the like, and identifies areas where we are deficient in terms of both physical ADA as well as non-physical, such as our website or other areas. So I anticipate as we receive that plan, which will be coming out in about June or July, that we'll begin planning for what fiscal impacts or improvements we need to make, and we may be increasing their budget in the future. Also, we have been struggling to maintain members on the Commission on Disability, so just want to put a plug. I guess that is the theme of the evening, that there are some specific criteria. The Commission must have a certain number of people that actually have a disability. So we have some availability on that commission if anyone is listening or here tonight and is interested in that. But again, this is probably the simplest budget presentation that you'll hear today or Saturday.
Where should they send that letter of interest or application letter?
Or to the town manager's office.
The town manager's office.
Yes.
Thank you. Anyone on the committee have questions about the Commission on Disabilities, or anyone in our audience here tonight? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Let us move now to the Services of Veterans.
Sure, so I'd like to introduce the Director of Veteran Services, Justin Souza. Similar to the health, we do have a regional veteran service that's shared by Westboro, Northborough, Grafton, and Shrewsbury. So thank you, Justin. Welcome this evening.
Hi, good evening. Good evening, everyone. I'm Justin Souza, Director of Veteran Services for the Central Mass Veteran Service District. I've been here since 2017 in July. So this next FY, I'll be getting my 3rd week of vacation finally on my 5th year. Very excited for that. So I have 2 slides tonight. The first one highlights some accomplishments. We've collaborated with local veterans groups such as the American Legion and the American Legion Post 397. They've been issuing gift cards from their own funds to needy veterans throughout the district, not just in Shrewsbury, but any needy veteran that needs one can get a gift card to Price Chopper. So I will make that plug tonight. If there are any needy veterans, you just come in, see the Senior Center, the Council on Aging's front desk, and ask for a gift card, and you should be able to get one.
Are most of the veteran services accessible that way through the Senior Center? I mean, is that usually the go-to?
Yeah, so because we run a district, we hold office hours different days of the week in different towns. But we do have our contact information available at the front desks at all 4 senior centers, as well as with the town manager's offices. And at the office, at the actual office where we work in each town, we have our contact information posted. So if anyone does need to get in touch with us, they can call either the direct line for the office and leave a message, or if they can get my work cell phone number, they can call me directly. I do have a part-time agent that works in the Westboro office and the Northborough office throughout the week. So he's usually able to field any phone calls that come in on the regular. I also want to mention that the Rotary Club of Shrewsbury has a couple veterans on it who were able to get them to donate a significant amount of Stop and Shop gift cards. And that's to help fight any type of food insecurity or other anything you can get at Stop and Shop or Price Chopper. They can use those gift cards to help. And there's no There's no means test for those. If a veteran has a need, all they gotta do is come in and tell us they have the need, and we'll try to make some of those cards available to them. We do run a program called Chapter 115 throughout, it's a state program that's administered at the local level through my office, and it does have a means test for veterans who are below a certain income limit and asset limit. They can receive a stipend, a monthly benefit check from the town, as well as reimbursements for medical and some dental expenses. One of our accomplishments this year was moving all of our Chapter 115 applicants from the old Vismas system onto a new state system called OnBase. So we use a case management system to track all of our cases and to get track our funds that we spend so that we're reimbursed, because the town is reimbursed but 75% at a rate of 75%. So every 75 cents, every dollar they spend, they get 75 cents back from the state for veterans that are on Chapter 115. We continue to drive our enrollment of eligible veterans on the federal benefits programs through the VA. I did notice a significant change in the benefits that are, so this is not something that I have direct control over. I am one of several different, I guess, agencies in the area that are able to file VA claims for veterans. There's also like the American Legion, the Disabled American Veterans, or the VA clinic in Worcester. They all have agents that can file VA claims, besides myself. So it doesn't matter what your geographic location is in the state. You can talk to any VSO, and any VSO in the state can file for you. But we typically like you to file in your town to help us track who we file for. As of 2021, October 2021, we had 313 veterans receiving an annual amount of $5 million and change in benefits from the VA. And that's compared to last year in 2020 in October, we had 342 veterans receiving $10 million in change. So that's about a $5 million decrease, and that is because of deaths, relocations, or changes to benefits for the veterans that reside in Shrewsbury. Any questions on the accomplishments I've gone over this evening?
Donna?
I'm just curious, what types of needs, other than applications for services in food insecurity, what other types of needs are there for our veterans, and are we meeting them as a town, and how can we do better?
By the letter of the Department of Veteran Services for the state, we are required to do Chapter 115 applications and enroll veterans and do federal applications for VA benefits. We try to make sure that through collaboration with like the Shine counselors and the senior centers, we're helping identify any additional needs specifically for our senior veterans. One quite often is transportation to medical appointments. They are typically able to utilize either the VA, they use DAV volunteers for driving to VA appointments, but to non-VA appointments, we are usually referring them over to the senior center buses, or conveniently enough, there's been that taxi cab grant that's been fairly easy. Some of the seniors don't like to take the bus. They feel like taking the bus, they might be by themselves. It seems like a lot, where the taxi cab seems to be a little nicer, a little more compact, more personal. I don't know. I like the buses. I think they're fun. As far as identifying other needs, it really comes down to the individual veteran, and if they come to my office and they ask me, I need help on my taxes, I'll find someone to help them with their taxes if that's what they need. So it's basically up to the veteran to ask us, because there's too much. You could be a veteran, but that might just be one of your identities. You're a civilian now. As a veteran, you have many different needs. You might be in any of the different generations, so you might have different health needs, different family needs, that kind of stuff. So it really depends on the individual veteran what they do need, but I try not to turn anyone away if I can help it. If I can't help them directly, I try to find them someone who I can refer them to, who I know will help them. Does that answer the question?
Yeah,
Okay,
thank you.
no problem.
Thank you, Don. Anyone else on the committee? Anyone from the public have questions specifically on where we are so far? Yeah, okay.
So my major goal for FY23 is going to be to further develop the outreach plan that our district uses and tie that in specifically in Shrewsbury with groups that work with at-risk populations. I don't have good contacts in the Shrewsbury housing. I have some Shrewsbury veterans that are housed in the Shrewsbury Housing Authority's properties, but I feel like there are probably some people there that may not be aware of the benefits that are available. So I want to make sure that I tie in better specifically with the Shrewsbury Housing Authority and also increase my working relationship with the Shrewsbury Youth and Family Services because they may be able to identify certain families that have needs that some veteran benefit might be able to help alleviate. So looking at the budget, you'll see that the budget line has decreased, or looks like it will decrease from 205 to 175,000.
15 trend.
Okay, and that can be largely explained in the. There's a second chart on the next page, if you don't mind. You'll see at the bottom there the 2021 calendar year Shrewsbury Chapter 115 cases decreased from 21 to 16. We had a few more in 2020. The direct reason for that, direct cost for that is Vets Inc. has moved their GPD program out of the South Street location that they had. So we've lost anywhere from 5 to 10 veterans that may cycle through Chapter 115 each year. And we've also had a few veterans unfortunately pass, so they're no longer receiving the benefit. So that previous slide shows the according reduction in benefits. Pop back up to that one. Okay, thanks. Some of the department highlights in moving our office out into the new location that Holly prepared for is we did an internal audit of our records and VA Chapter 115 records and VA claims, getting rid of them in accordance with the state law. The ones that we did not need to keep anymore were destroyed. The ones that we do need to keep are secured in our filing cabinet here in Shrewsbury. I'm really proud of our draft marketing plan. I'm not a businessman, so I've been reading up on all the lingo for increasing your marketing. I created this logo myself, using the 4 logos for the 4 seals for the 4 towns we work for, as well as the American flag with our contact information down at the bottom there. We are working on a pamphlet for veterans benefits that will be distributable, hopefully within mailings, within mailings to the registered veteran voters in towns throughout the district next year. And we were able to adapt our outreach plan to a pandemic environment, meaning that we switched to a mostly remote contacts, phone calls, emails, social media, keeping our presence visible on those platforms and contacting veterans as needed. Pending any questions, that concludes my budget report.
Anyone on the committee have questions for the remainder of the report? No? Anyone in the peanut gallery for Veteran Services? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you. I appreciate your time. Hope you have a good night.
It's nice to see your happy face again.
Oh, thanks. I apologize, going before a couple different finance committees, and some of the faces have changed. I never remember anyone's name.
Oh,
We have it right here, man. We're cool. That's why we put it here.
If I run into you in the hallway and I don't say hi, make sure you stop me, because I may be relying on that.
Oh, I actually walk around with this. You laugh. Some people actually think I do. All right, next. Library. Library.
I'd like to introduce the Director of Library Services, Priya Rathman, and she also has members of her Library Board of Trustees, so I would let her introduce them, and looking forward to hearing about the library budget and their strategic planning efforts this evening.
Thank you, Kristen.
1, 2, 3, perfect.
Do you have enough?
Yeah, I'm looking at his.
Yeah.
Oh, grab that. Here we go. Thank you. Hit it.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Priya Ratnam, the Library Director. Thank you for the opportunity to provide a review of the Board of Trustees fiscal 2023 budget request and its impact on library services. And all my Board of Trustee members are here, so I'd like to introduce them. Claire O'Connor, Lisa Powers, Jeff Bellingham, Nancy Gilbert, April Jones-Prince, Anne-Marie Bird, Deb LeBeau, Joan Barry, and Purnima Tekumala. So the Board of Library Trustees enhanced budget request and the Town Manager's fiscal projection 1 includes funding additional page hours, a seasonal circulation aid at 20.8 hours for 9 weeks, and 2 teen aids to help us on Fridays and early release days. Excuse me. There's no addition to our operational expenses. This budget request will allow us to meet the following objectives of the Board of Library Trustees. Meet municipal appropriation requirements of the state certification program, maintain the service schedule of 63 hours per week and 67 weekly hours from October through May, seek to meet the growing demand for library materials resulting from increased usage, expanding formats, and rising costs. Seek to position the community for continued compliance with the library materials expenditure requirement. Work towards the goals of the library's strategic plan of service 2020 through 2024 and the fiscal year 2023 action plan. All of the library programs are funded by the Friends of the Library. That's about $25,000 annually. In fiscal year 2022, library state aid funds were used for special projects such as website and logo development with a consulting firm, professional development programs for staff, and special programs such as the Memory Cafe and the English Conversation Circle. I would like to briefly describe the library's accomplishments and highlights. The $10,000 Civic Hub grant that we received last year has allowed us to invite great speakers, authors, poets, and subject matter experts who delve into historical topics, provide context for historical events, and enhance our understanding of thorny topics. Through these programs, we hope to foster deeper empathy and understanding, spark conversations, and interactions among community members. In the next few months, we propose to facilitate community conversations among various groups that we hope will promote radical empathy and pave the way for a just and equitable society. You can see a list of events that we are hosting in the brochure that I just passed around. The library continues to fulfill its role as an information hub. We are constantly researching databases that we might add to our online resources that's already rich with information on genealogy, computer courses, test prep materials, educational activities for children, and tutoring services for school-age students. We review the materials that we purchase and ensure that the online resources consist of well-researched, accurate, and peer-reviewed material. Multiple programs that are offered at the library are accessible to in-person and remote participants. During the past year, our library has partnered with other libraries and other organizations to provide programs that are cost-effective for us. One example is a partnership with a coalition of libraries that has resulted in a job seekers network program for people 50 plus, where participants can avail themselves of the services of employment experts. We've even partnered with the Shrewsbury Library in Shropshire, UK. On Saturday, we will be having a joint book discussion with residents of Shrewsbury, UK, and our community. The library is a community hub and a welcoming gathering place for residents and patrons of all ages. After a rocky start in 2022 with reduced hours and limited access, the library is now open for regular pre-pandemic hours. Families with young children enjoy the story times and the opportunity for social interaction in the library. Tweens and teens love the library, maybe a little too much on Friday afternoons. Adults come to the library to read, relax, socialize, learn, browse, research, and work. Adult English language learners from around the world attend our English Conversation Circle sessions. The Conversation Circle facilitator, who teaches on Zoom, described her class as being pretty close to a delightful United Nations, with an MBA student in Karachi zooming in from Pakistan and a person joining from South Korea. They said they had found the program online. A couple from Dubai, a grandma from Burundi, and regular attendees from Japan, India, and China, all living in Shrewsbury, make up the diverse class. I would like to thank the Board of Trustees for their ongoing support, the town manager for his guidance, and the community for their overwhelming love and support. A patron told me that the library is important for her salvation and that she was glad we were open. I told her that my staff feels the same way, and we need the library to be open for our salvation. I would like to thank my staff too for their dedicated service and for their flexibility and resilience these past 2 years. Our primary goal for 2023 is to expand community outreach and engagement. And we plan to encourage community dialogue on topics of diversity, culture, politics, and town priorities, plan events to cater to a variety of interests and respond to the community's changing needs, proactively reach out to residents in apartment complexes, have a library card drive, and publicize library services and programs, collaborate with businesses in the town center, and create a story walk in the center of town for residents to enjoy. Have a library presence in the old Beale property, maybe a reading corner, and provide access to books, magazines, and newspapers. Develop a pop-up library to reach those residents who are unable to enter the library's physical space due to, but not limited to, social distancing regulations, lack of transportation, accessibility restrictions, or lack of awareness of library services. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions from the Finance Committee for the Director of the Library or their Board of Trustees? Donna?
Have you had better control over the tweens coming in?
We are taking a lot of measures to deal with the situation. We have hired 2 teen aides to help our staff. We have adult volunteers. The trustees themselves have volunteered a few times. The library has designated spaces for different groups of people. We have a beautiful children's room, which we want families and little kids to enjoy. We have a reading room for adults to read newspapers and magazines. There is an area where there are tutors and students. And we have an amazing teen room and the community commons, the hallway. So we are asking the tweens and the middle school students to be in that area when they come in the afternoon, in the teen area and in the community commons where they're allowed to eat and drink too. So these are some things that we're doing.
I drive by the library at least once or twice a day, and it's just something, even if I can't stop to go in, which I never have time to stop to go in, I just love that building. And I don't know another town that has such a beautiful place. I really don't. So I congratulate you for that. I do have one question, or maybe it's a concern. How do you deal with, you mentioned that you're going to have programs, and you mentioned politics. In the hateful society that we seem to have right now as it comes to politics, how will you maintain a neutrality while you have those types of programs?
I believe that it is the library's role to inform and educate the public. And that's what we aim to do. It's not controversial topics, it's topics that will educate us. So we do hope to, deal with, we do hope to plan on providing experts, inviting experts to talk on various topics, and inviting the public also to participate.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Thank
Judy?
In years past, there's been an issue with, hours being open or purchasing of materials for, like state minimum. Where are we and how is that, where are we and what's projected, I guess is?
The materials requirement is still the same. 13% of our total budget has to be spent on materials. The hours open requirement had been waived last year because libraries were not open. And this year also they have waived the requirement for a few months. When there was a surge in COVID numbers, they revised that rule. So January through March end, I think they said they would not count that.
So let me ask, how are we positioned when these reduced requirements kind of go away? How are we positioned to be able to meet the normal requirements of open hours?
Oh, we are already open 62 hours, 63 hours a week, and then the Sunday hours. So just a few months, actually only January we were not open. Last July through December we were open the regular hours.
So you're saying that we no longer have the issue of being open enough hours for the state requirements?
We have enough hours, it's 59.
Okay.
So we're above that.
We
Okay,
were
all right,
above
all right,
that,
Karen,
yes.
thank you. And are the Sunday hours still financed through donations?
Through private donations, yes.
And is there any discussion of changing that so that they're covered within the budget as opposed to relying on donations?
We haven't really discussed that. Yeah. We're very grateful to the donors who've been donating every year.
Absolutely, but,
so.
I'm just trying to figure out where we are positioned for when we completely return to normal, if we're still gonna be struggling, because, it's been difficult over the years to be below hours, below our material budget. I know that that's been an issue. And just trying to understand where we are positioned for when things are 100% normal.
This budget meets all state requirements for
Excellent.
hours
All right.
and material costs.
That's
Yep.
excellent to hear. Thank you.
Any other questions from the committee for the director of the library? Any questions from the comfy seats, although most of the comfy seats is occupied by the library trustees?
I just have.
Mrs. O'Connor, go ahead.
It's unusual to see that you're requesting less money than you're getting. Am I reading this wrong?
Don't tell her.
Don't tell Kevin.
No,
Well, it's just reflective in the base for budget requests versus the enhanced budget request. So technically, the library is receiving all dollars that they've requested,
Not more?
not more.
Okay. I must have read it wrong.
No, you're seeing it properly, but it's just the internal process between the base budget request and then we review enhanced budget requests to see if they can be funded. So it's the full funding enhanced level request.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from the back, please? Okay. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
We will now move to operating support. We're handling the town manager's office and the Board of Selectmen tomorrow, Saturday, right?
Yep, there's Saturday.
Okay. I don't know why I thought that was tonight. That's okay.
So with regards to operating support includes several line items here that you see, $17,682,924. Several of these line items, which I'm happy to point out, which include group health insurance, Medicare employer match, unemployment insurance compensation, general insurance, support both municipal operations and education operations. The largest single line item that you can see, of course, is group health and life insurance, and this represents the town's contribution to employees and retirees' life insurance, life and, but mainly health insurance premiums. The town funds 50% of retiree, up to the low 70%, and then on the active plans, we have plans that range from 50-50, 60-40, up into the upper 70% on a town contribution, just depending on the type of plan, whether it's a high deductible plan or what have you.
Mr. Mizikar, excuse me, if I just because while we're on that one line, I want to just ask a question. I see that Fallon Health is coming off the West Suburban Health Group. It's not us.
That's correct.
It's about the whole plan in general. That's not a small deal. They're a big group. They're a big practice. They're a big plan, and I assume that the West Suburban Health Group is represents a very large group. Is that going to show in itself any specific savings or extra costs? And is that going to create fewer options for the employees and the retirees?
So Fallon will still be in the retiree marketplace.
Oh, okay.
So it won't affect our retirees at all, the Medicare marketplace. It will provide more limited options to employees because we'll be moving from 4 plans to 3, but they will still have Blue Cross Blue Shield, Harvard, and Tufts to choose from. And within each one of those, they'll have both benchmark HMO plans, traditional deductibles and copays, and then high deductible plans from each one of those plans as well. So the West Suburban Health Group has worked really since last April when we were notified to develop a kind of a soft landing for both employers and employees. And ultimately, basically, in simplest terms, Blue Cross Blue Shield network will be taking the place of Fallon as the lowest cost provider through the West Suburban Health Group.
Blue Cross is going to be the lowest cost.
Yep, so the West Suburban Health Group is a fully insured entity of 11 municipalities with about $120 million in annual claims. So we control the premiums for each one of those plans. So we're working really on a multi-year plan to both absorb those cost changes at the West Suburban Health Group level, and then we've worked locally here at the Insurance Advisory Committee to change contribution rates. Blue Cross Blue Shield used to be a 60-40 plan. The town paid 60, employees paid 40, but with the lowering of that cost, we've moved it into that traditional Fallon model where it's on average like 75-25. I think it's a pretty soft land. It's about an 8% year-over-year cost increase, and you're right, about 90% of our employees who take health insurance were on Fallon. So we're in actually early open enrollment right now, and we've done a series of seminars with employees to try to provide them with information. So it's been a lot of work, but we think we're in a good place.
Okay. Thank you. This is not a small deal, so I was just big red flag for me. I was curious about that. Okay.
Follow-up question on that.
Yeah.
So it's going to be about an 8% increase. How does that compare with other municipal groups, or even, I think it's been much larger in the public sector, private sector, excuse me,
Yep.
increases, so.
Yeah, so I mean, that 8% increase is on the Blue Cross Blue Shield plans. Tufts and Harvard Pilgrim are 5%. We've been very fortunate in West Suburban Health Group. Again, we're fully insured. Over recent years, we've I know it sounds weird, but benefited from COVID because, our claims numbers have not been as high as they have been. So we have greater reserves. We have almost 24% reserves on hand. So we are feeding a little bit of the reserves in to manage this cost over the next 2 years, but it's very planned out and within the policy limitations of the West Suburban Health Group. But yeah, I think we're faring much better because we're part of this 11 municipality joint purchasing group, and we're not subject as towns who are fully insured, i.e. the health insurer covers the risk of, experiencing a 10 or 20% spike year over year. So we also are part of what's called I won't go too deep, I know it's getting late, the Massachusetts Municipal Reinsurance Agency, which is a group of 3 joint purchasing groups who purchase reinsurance for all of our claims from $400,000 to $1 million. So that reinsurance plan really saves us a lot of money as well. That costs the West Suburban Health Group about $7 million a year for that reinsurance, but it pays dividends well beyond. So it's a pretty complicated system. But it's worked out very well for the town.
It sounds it. Great job.
That reassurance, that's a backstop on our health insurance plan, right?
That is correct.
Because we're a self-insurer.
Yep.
Okay.
So West Suburban Health Group funds, claims $1 through $400,000, and then the reinsurance picks up $400,000 through $1 million.
Donna?
Unemployment is staying the same, the amount, but why did it climb so much over the last couple of years like that?
Just COVID. COVID, layoffs, other people, when they used to work for the town and were laid off, and if we have quarters that we're responsible for, we have to pay for them. So those are real. 2020 and 2021 shown on this screen is COVID.
Really?
It's that economic downturn and shutdowns. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Anyone else on the committee? I'm sorry, I actually interrupted you.
Yeah, no, that's okay. So, we just kind of talked about, so the Medicare employer match is the town's responsibility as an employer to pay into Medicare. It's, what we contribute to the feds. Unemployment compensation is just that. Hopefully, beyond 2023, we can start to ratchet it back down, but we're being conservative with that number for now. Other major line items, the most significant cost increase that we're seeing right here is oil and fuel. That's an increase of 17%, almost $60,000. We are in a joint purchasing arrangement with the city of Worcester where we go out to bid for the calendar year, and we lock in prices. So we were very fortunate. We're locked into about $2.50 a gallon gas for this calendar year. Obviously, we'll do whatever we can to leverage that for as long as we can, and we'll be prepared for additional cost increases in calendar year 2023, but we're in a really good spot for now. Pretty much everything is, I'll touch on general insurance includes all of our liability, property, professional liability policies, and it's a year-over-year cost increase, but if you'll remember in the fall, we funded some of the property liability insurance for the new Beal School outside of the budget using American Rescue Plan Act dollars, so we're rolling that in, and we're also accounting for 6 months of the new police station, having a certificate of occupancy. So those are the highlights of this budget area.
It's such a large part of the budget, and it's such an important part of the budget, and it backs up every single person, every single project, every single building in the town. I don't think we could possibly give it the operating support section the attention that it needs because it's such a big deal. So I don't want anyone to just gloss over it and think, oh, this is just some crumbs in the couch cushions. This is a very big deal. So if anybody also has any questions on Saturday that come back to you, please use that opportunity, remind me, and bring it up then. Okay. Anyone else have anything though right now? Operating support. Any of the cool kids in the back? Okay. Let's move to the enormous Finance Committee budget. We didn't go to our reserve funds this year.
Not yet.
Knock on wood.
Not yet.
Hooray.
We'll be in next month.
Oh, okay. What have you got for us?
So a really level funded budget year over year, or the vast majority of these funds are, of course, or do account for the reserve fund, which is a fund that we rely upon that allows us some flexibility throughout the course of the year to not have to go back to town meeting for additional appropriations. This falls under the purview of the Finance Committee, and you can distribute these funds out to the various municipal departments. So, with all due respect, not too much exciting here.
Yes. It's always been important to me that this number, on the one hand, be a good cushion for anything that might happen, but frankly, it shows that, oops, something happened and we didn't budget for it, we didn't account for it, and it would be really nice. I know there was something many years ago, we used to do the sick leave bank or something like that. Every year we would go to the reserve fund, and it became kind of a silly exercise. Hey, let's budget for that, let's put it in the main project and not always have to dip into the reserve fund for that.
What would cause that increase from 21 to 22, the $506 to 231,000?
So the actual on this is a little bit of a misnomer. That was actually all that was remaining in that budget because we transferred funds out of this. So in those years, you used about 230,000 of the reserve fund. So it's a little bit opposite. So if you go into the other departments who received those, they would have more money than was originally budgeted. So when we look at bottom lines, the reserve fund ends up with a lesser amount. That means we've spent it. Yep, on the actuals. Yep.
Where's the Finance Committee salaries? I don't see that. Our expenses, nothing?
They're in there.
Yeah, we
Okay.
have,
Looking forward to
some
that.
memberships.
Yeah, really. And the conferences. Don't forget the Finance Committee conferences we need to go to. Palm Beach. Okay. Just, I'm guessing. Any other questions from the committee on the Finance Committee's budget? Any jealous selectmen in the back who want to complain about how much money we're spending? All right, then let's move on to the Personnel Board.
So the Personnel Board budget is indeed controlled by the Personnel Board, and it's primarily used to adjust employees' salary and wages year over year for cost of living and merit adjustments. Those numbers are, the cost of living adjustment is the recommendation of the Personnel Board, and it will bring forth that recommendation to you at your April hearing related to town meeting. And the other large aspect of this budget, which is about $25,000, is a centralized training budget for all staff that we use for various purposes throughout the year if an individual department doesn't have sufficient funding to cover their training needs. So this is also back to Rajiv's question on the previous one. So this is another budget where we draw out of, so the actuals show only what was remaining. So for instance, you know, a cost of living increase across all non-union employees, wage line items would be, say, like $125,000. So if that's what the cost of living adjustment is, we would draw this $306,000 down by $125,000 and distribute it to those individual line items in the other budgets. You will notice, for the most part, unless there's an increase in the total FTEs, the 1, 2, 3 line items in the individual departments, their salary and wage line items are level from FY22 to FY23, and then these dollars are applied to it as we make salary and wage adjustments throughout the year. And through Mary's staff, we, worked with the personnel board to make those adjustments as needed.
Any questions from the committee on the personnel board budget? Mr.
Just-
Chabra?
Yes, just a technical question, Kevin. So if we have 298,000 left from 2022, that's basically, when we're saying in 2023, we're requesting 298, that's basically coming out of what we had left over. That's how accounts work, is?
Well, no, so the 298 is what's budgeted. That's not what we have drawn down on, so that would have to be updated to get you what we've drawn down on. So that's just, that's the original budgeted number for comparison purposes. But it's like, it's yearly dollars, so if they're not spent and there's not an appropriate reason to carry them forward, then it gets turned back to free cash.
I see. Okay, understood. Thank you.
Sure.
Anyone else on the committee? Anyone from the Peanut Gallery on the personnel board? Okay, we're going to adjourn the public hearing and then finish up with the business of.
We adjourn.
Second.
All right, this is of course merely a recess or an adjourn until our Saturday meeting. Is there any further discussion on that adjournment? Hearing none, all in favor of doing that, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, say nay. Motion carries. The public hearing is now adjourned, so nobody in the peanut gallery say anything because we're not listening to you anymore. Moving on, let us talk about the meeting schedule for, well, it looks like the rest of March, April, and May. Obviously, we have a meeting on Saturday to finish the budget hearings. That meeting starts at what time? Is that 8:30? 8:30, right. And we'll go as long as we have to go. I invite the public to please join us. You saw how much fun we have tonight. Please come back and join us anytime on Saturday, right back in this room. We will have at least one public hearing on Thursday, April 14th, and possibly on the Thursday, April 28th if we need to. On the entire warrant, we will go over every single article. We'll have a presentation of it, and then we will take public comments again. And anybody wants to tell us what they think, or ask us any questions, or ask the department heads or anybody who's presenting questions on the warrant articles specifically, that's your time for that. So that'll be Thursday, April 14th, and probably Thursday, April 28th, but no guarantees. And then at the end of that, we will be voting on our recommendations on all of those articles, assuming we get through them, which brings me to Thursday, May the 19th. We call that pre-town meeting, but it is the day at which the moderator meets here with town meeting members who choose to join us, and he will talk us through the warrant, introduce it to everyone. Maybe there'll be new, maybe there'll be new town meeting members, and you'll kind of be introduced to it. So that way, when you actually get to town meeting, it's not new to you, and it's a fun little exercise to kind of explain how the warrant works, how town meeting works. So please come to that. That's not formally a finance committee meeting, except that traditionally the finance committee has met in this room immediately thereafter. And I would like us to assume that we're going to meet on that day. Very often there are some pending questions, warrant articles that haven't been addressed because of late-breaking issues, or we have some questions at our previous hearings that we want folks to answer, such as like a planning board. They haven't had their recommendations yet. Sometimes the selectmen want to tweak a little something, which is all fine and good. So that way this kind of gives us a last chance to make our recommendations. In this case, just 2 days before town meeting. Also, there'll be possibly petition articles. Mr. Mizikar, do you know if petition articles have been filed this year?
None.
None, and we're past the deadline?
Yes.
There will not be petition articles this year, so we won't have to consider those, but we will have the rest of the warrant to go through. And if somehow we manage to get through absolutely everything in the April 14th or April 28th, then it'll be a very quick meeting, or perhaps we'll cancel it. So, then finally, the best, happiest day of the year, our annual town meeting, which will be Saturday, May 21st. That'll be at Oak Middle School Auditorium, where it ought to be. And that's going to be the full, is this the new normal? Are we going to start doing that regularly now, Saturday meetings? Or is this still under exceptions?
No exceptions this year.
So we're just doing it for reals now?
Yep.
Splendid. Okay. What time do we know what time town meeting is?
I believe it's 8:30.
8:30 as well. Okay. So good luck to everyone who's running for town meeting. That election is the first Tuesday of May. And the winners of that election will be coming to town meeting on the 21st. And any guests who want to join, and the public is, of course, welcome to attend and make comments if available. Any questions on the schedule? Okay. So, at the beginning of our packet that we give to town meeting members, there is the Finance Committee report. It's usually a summary, kind of an executive summary, but also kind of gives our opinion on the whole process and what we think is going to happen. We haven't addressed it yet. We don't have a draft of it yet. Mr. Mizikar, do you have anything you want to say on that at this stage of the game?
I just took a note to start on it.
Oh, okay. Right. Often we are constrained by printing deadlines.
Correct.
What is our printing deadline?
I believe it's somewhere around the 28th, right?
It's the Friday, we put it in
The
that Friday after your April
So
28th
the
meeting.
29th of April.
29th of April?
Yeah.
Gosh, okay. Yeah, it'd be nice to,
Yeah, we'll get working on it.
is there something that, if there's anything that anybody would like addressed specifically, they could send the comments directly to you?
Mhm.
Yeah, do not send it to the group, because we're trying to, keep with the open meeting laws, so group chatter is not allowed, especially on something that we'll be voting on that gives our opinion. So, send it directly to Mr. Mizikar, and he'll bring it to the group.
And Mr. Chairman, we'll start with last year's version and do a simple update, and then work with you if there's any other areas that we receive to update. Okay,
Always a good plan.
thank you.
Okay, and the correspondence, nothing that is all that earth-shattering. Schedule from Mr. Mizikar to us. Ms. Kane's resignation. Ms. O'Connor's appointment, which we discussed. Again, welcome still. You're still welcome. Still nice to have you. All right. Seeing no further business, Ms. O'Connor, would you like to
Move we adjourn.
move that we adjourn?
Second.
Second here, sorry.
Okay.
That's not debatable.
Got the advantage.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Meeting's adjourned. Thank you very much. Good night.